Chapter 630. When we returned to the Tao Palace, Officer Wong seemed to have calculated the time. Right after the fatty and I had finished dinner, he appeared at the gate of the Tao Palace. Perhaps it was because we had won a lot in the arena and were getting closer to the champion position. Or perhaps it was because he had seen the fatty's 9 bends Yellow River Formation and thought that the Wangwu Fairyland Protective Formation could be repaired. But Officer Wong was in a good mood. He walked briskly, and the worry on his face was gone. Because of our agreement yesterday, the fatty and I didn't think it was strange. However, Officer Wong thanked me and the fatty. Then, he took out the ancient book that recorded the Mountain Protecting Formation. It was a yellowed ancient book. Just as Officer Wong had said, the pages were broken, and many parts of the book couldn't be seen clearly. The fatty didn't mind it. He took the book from Officer Wong and read it carefully. However, it didn't take long for his expression to turn ugly. Did he encounter a problem? Seeing him like that, my heart was in my throat. I couldn't help but lean over to take a look. In layman's terms, a formation was the arrangement of a formation in a battle. If a formation was arranged properly, it could fully exert its fighting power. Through a reasonable arrangement of soldiers, it could exert the best effect and defeat the enemy. The people of metaphysics also discovered this. They used spiritual items, talismans, or Taoist chi to replace the soldiers and set up the formation. They found that the effect was amazing, so some people went deeper and deeper into this path and passed down the path of formation. I wasn't an expert in formations, but after hanging out with the fatty for a long time, I knew some of the basics. However, the things recorded in the book were obscure and hard to understand, as if they were from the heavens. There were also some things that couldn't be recorded in words, so the ancient book listed them in the form of diagrams. Although I wanted to help, I wasn't professional enough, so I wasn't able to do anything. I looked at the fatty, and his face kept changing. I couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong? What's the problem?" The fatty was very excited. After hearing my question, he answered without raising his head, "The knowledge about formations in this book is very profound. There are some things that aren't even recorded in the scripture depository of our Zhanshi faction. I can't guarantee that I can find an effective method right away, but give me 3 days. I think I can do it." Fatty had always been a straightforward person. He would say whatever he wanted to say. If he spoke like that, then there must be a big problem. However, after receiving his assurance, I was no longer worried. Since he had said so, it meant that he was 60 to 70% sure that the formation could be repaired. Hearing that, Wong Kin's expression also relaxed. He looked at the fat man, then at me. He lowered his voice and said, "In that case, I won't bother you anymore. Young Master Lin, don't worry. Your health is the most important. Sage, young Master Lin, I still have some other matters to attend to. I'll take my leave first." I waved my hand and escorted Officer Wong out of the Holy Ji Palace. I told him about the competition and then returned to the Holy Ji Palace. Fatty, on the other hand, seemed to be in a trance. He held the ancient book in one hand and drew a few lines in the air with his other hand, as if he was practicing a formation. Don't be fooled by his simple movements, but the aura that leaked out was not to be underestimated. Seeing the fatty's temperament, I didn't say much. I just reminded him not to stay up too late. Then, I returned to my room to rest. I had a lot of things to do these days, and it was rare for me to have a good rest. After I returned to my room, I went to bed and slept. When I woke up, it was already the next morning. After washing up, I went to the fatty's room to wake him up, but he wasn't in his room. I felt strange, so I went to the living room and found him sleeping on the floor. It was obvious that this fellow had been studying the array the entire night and had fallen asleep in the hall because he had overdone it. Although cultivators had much more energy than ordinary people, formations were something that consumed one's mind. It was easy for them to be exhausted. Seeing how tired the fatty was, I wanted to let him sleep. However, since the All-Heaven Grand Competition was about to start, I had no choice but to wake him up. After waking up, the fatty seemed to have recovered. After washing up, he followed me to the venue. Along the way, the fatty kept talking about the Wong family's protective formation. He couldn't stop praising it. He also said that after a night of study, he had learned a lot of knowledge from the ancient book and his mastery of array formations had also improved a lot. After listening to him, my last bit of worry was gone. The fatty was completely immersed in studying formations. Even if Officer Wong asked him to stop repairing the formation, I was afraid he wouldn't agree. Soon, the fatty and I arrived at the venue. It was strange that Officer Wong and Fu were waiting for us at the entrance. When they saw me and the fatty, they hurried to welcome us, their faces filled with anxiety. I looked at them and asked, "What's wrong?" When Officer Wong heard my question, he swallowed his saliva and said slowly, "Sage, our opponent today is Lu Jinyang." Lu Jinyang? Yesterday, I thought that after the fourth round, it would be more likely for us to meet each other. I didn't expect that we would meet each other today. Because of our agreement, I hoped that Lu Jinyang would go a little later. Unfortunately, things didn't go our way, and we met each other in this round. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Officer Wong opened his mouth and said, "According to Lu Jinyang's previous performance, Fu won't be able to defeat him in the Yang God Celestial Masters arena. So, if we want to win this match, we have to rely on the Sage and young Master Lin." Then, he glanced at the fatty. After listening to Officer Wong, I got it. When Lu Jinyang came to see me, Officer Wong wasn't there. Of course, he didn't know that Lu Jinyang had promised to admit defeat. This morning, he and Fu were waiting at the entrance in a panic. I guess they were frightened by Lu Jinyang's strength and felt pressured. That was why they came to see me and the fatty to discuss countermeasures. After understanding this, I smiled and said to Officer Wong and Fu, "Don't worry. Today, we don't need to fight to enter the next round." "Why?" Officer Wong frowned and looked puzzled. I smiled and kept him in suspense. I didn't say anything and just waved my hand as I walked into the hall. When we entered the venue, the Lu family was already waiting for us. As I had expected, Lu Jinyang wasn't there. Only Lu Qingyi and Lu Qingping were there. When Lu Qingping saw me in the crowd, he glanced at me and snorted coldly. Then he looked away. When I walked closer, I saw that he was holding his arms. The wounds he had received in the arena yesterday hadn't healed yet. Lu Qingyi was not much better off. His face was frighteningly pale. It looked like even though he had won against the golden altar of Hua Yang's cave on the arena yesterday, he had paid a hefty price. Seeing me walk towards them, Lu Qingyi looked at me coldly and said, "Jinyang said that we will admit defeat today. I hope you will remember your promise." It was obvious that Lu Qingyi didn't approve of Lu Jinyang's decision. However, Lu Jinyang wasn't the young master who relied on the Lu family's power to act like a tyrant. He was the true leader who carried the Lu family forward. Since he had made his decision, even his father, Lu Qingyi, couldn't oppose him. No matter what, the Lu family had admitted defeat. I could relax for a day, so I was in a good mood. I didn't care about the coldness in Lu Qingyi's eyes and just nodded. Of course, Lu Qingyi didn't say anything else. After admitting defeat, he brought Lu Qingping and left the arena. After entering this round, every step forward was a great fortune. No matter how great the difference in power was, they would choose to fight to the death. However, the spiritual mountain blessed land actually admitted defeat before the battle. This caused a huge uproar in the arena. However, very quickly, after the other battle started, everyone's gazes were attracted to them. No one paid attention to us anymore. At this moment, the fatty, Ah Fu and I returned to the viewing platform. Like everyone else, we raised our heads to look at the other battles on the arena. It was now the 5th round of the Heavenly Grand Ritual. There were only 8 families that had the qualifications to participate. In other words, after this battle, there would be 2 more rounds. Our Wanwu Wonderland would be able to sit on the champion's position for another 10 years. In these 2 rounds, there was a high chance that we would meet the West City Wonderland. With Han Wennan's guarantee, even if we met the West City Wonderland, it would be a win without a fight. So, there was a high possibility that we would only need 1 more battle to be able to hold on to the champion's position. Just now, I glanced at the West City Wonderland arena. I didn't know when, but their main team had changed. The leader was Han Wennan's personal maid, Lu Wu. However, Han Wennan still didn't have any intention of fighting. Apart from the West City Wonderland, the other Wonderlands were basically the same. At this stage of the competition, all the surviving Wonderlands had basically used up all their trump cards. It was normal that there weren't any changes. This round of battles was still rather intense. However, there weren't many highlights. Lu Wu and the others were strong. They suppressed their opponents the moment they entered the arena and won a battle in a short period of time. The West City Wonderland's other two battles were also successful. Very quickly, they won both battles and became the second Wonderland to advance to the semifinals. Next was the Schwanda Wonderland. Under Zhao Hao's lead, they fought fiercely, especially his cloud-swallowing sword art. It attracted a lot of attention. Even I couldn't help but take a few more glances. I became even more cautious. Just like that, the Schwanda Wonderland won the third spot in the semifinals. Following that, the battles continued until noon. The fourth spot was confirmed. It was the Weiyu Wonderland, also known as the Great Emptiness Wonderland. Thus, the fifth round came to an end. Chapter 631. When we returned to the palace that Officer Wong had prepared for us, the fatty ignored me and rushed back to his room to study the Wong family's formation. Seeing that he was so enthusiastic, I couldn't stay idle. After dinner, I returned to my room and continued to read Song Feng's Emotive Sword Path. On the way back, I carefully pondered. According to the rules of the Heavenly Grand Ritual, I didn't have to wait until the finals. I would be fighting Zhao Hao in the next round, which was tomorrow. Although I've fought Zhao Hao in the past, Zhao Hao had relied on the strength of a sword slave to fight me, so he didn't reveal much of his own strength. Coupled with the fact that he and I practically walked onto the arena at the same time and left the arena at the same time, this is the first time I've seen him fight with his full strength. His cloud-swallowing sword art was very powerful. Even though I was on the viewing platform, I felt that this move couldn't be underestimated. According to my current strength, I only had a 50-50 chance of winning against him. If I wasn't careful, I might lose. According to Schwanda's Wonderland strength, they didn't have any hope of winning against Ah Fu. Therefore, I felt an unprecedented sense of urgency. I had to make the best use of my time to study Song Feng's Emotive Sword Path. After using Hidden Edge's emotionless Sword Dao in the arena today, I have become somewhat familiar with it. Although its power couldn't be compared to the emotionless sword path, it had sufficient momentum. Most importantly, compared to the emotionless sword path, Song Feng's emotionless sword path conserved more true essence. This gave me more opportunities to counterattack in the arena. Furthermore, the power that the emotional sword Dao had displayed so far was only half of the effect that I had studied. When I had mastered the emotional sword Dao and met Zhao Hao in the arena, his chances of winning wouldn't be more than 30%. The night passed uneventfully. As the sun rose from the east, I came back to my senses from the emotionless sword path. I looked at the booklet that I had studied thoroughly and immediately felt much more relaxed. After cleaning up, I brought the fatty to the arena. On the way, I mentioned that my opponent today was Zhao Hao. When the fatty heard that, he became much more spirited. He patted his chest and assured me, "Don't worry, third child. Even that Li Yuan wasn't a match for me. This time, even if they send someone like Zhao Yuan or Lu Yuan from the Schwanda Grotto heaven, I will still be able to kill them." I looked at the fatty. This fellow hadn't rested last night. He must have spent the whole night researching, just like me. However, I couldn't see much exhaustion on his face. On the contrary, he gave me a feeling that he was in high spirits. Come to think of it, after last night's training, his skills have improved a lot, and with Li Yuan's cultivation in his hands, I'm afraid his chances of winning are even greater than mine against Zhao Hao. When we arrived at the venue, Officer Wong and Fu were still waiting for us at the entrance. When they saw me and the fatty, they took the initiative to greet us. I glanced at them. They looked even more nervous than the day before. Officer Wong came over and said in a low voice, "Sage, Child Lin, Zhao Hao's main force has changed again." Perhaps they had expected that we would be enemies. Officer Wong brought 2 helpers from the Schwanda Cave to replace the previous Yang God, Celestial Master, and Ji Yao Geomaster. I haven't found out the specific situation yet. We'd better be careful in the arena today. They've changed again? Zhao Hao had said at the banquet that he already had the power of a Yang God, Celestial Master. However, he had been suppressing his power to break through in order to participate in the All-Heaven Grand Competition. For Wangwu Cave, he was already a formidable opponent. Now that he had two more mysterious helpers, it was no wonder that Officer Wang and Fu were so nervous. I smiled and nodded in agreement, but I was still looking forward to fighting against him. Especially the fatty, he understood that Zhao Hao had shamelessly invited helpers to deal with him. Not only was he not afraid, but he also looked complacent. He was eager to have a try. We entered the venue and waited for a while at the edge of the arena. Zhao Hao's team was late. I glanced at Zhao Hao's team. The Yang God Celestial Master and Ji Yao Geomaster had changed. The previous Yang God Celestial Master was a white-haired old man with a fiery temper. He would create a gust of wind when he walked. But today, the Yang God Celestial Master on Zhao Hao's left side was a middle-aged man in his 30s. After noticing us, he had a smile on his face and didn't have any hostility. On his right side, the previous young Ji Yao Geomaster had been replaced by an old man. Just from his appearance, I couldn't see any difference. However, after his gaze locked onto the fatty in the crowd, it was filled with viciousness like a poisonous snake that had found its prey. Zhao Hao came in front of us. It was rare that he didn't flaunt his prowess. Instead, he wore a disdainful smile as he said to me, "Zhou Yi, I advise you to quickly admit defeat. I know that you aren't weak, but do you know who the two people beside me are? This is the Jade Beauty, Sword Monarch, Hu Yurong, and this is the #1 person in the Ji Yao realm, Li Yuan. Li Yuan, whose cultivation was destroyed by the fatty in the previous match, is the grandson of Senior Li Yuan." As he said that, Zhao Hao suddenly stopped. When he opened his mouth again, his voice became cold. "So if you don't want to die, I advise you to quickly admit defeat. Jade Beauty, Sword Monarch, Hu Yurong." The #1 person in the Ji Yao realm, Li Yuan. I really didn't have much of an impression of that Jade Beauty, Sword Monarch. Perhaps Zhao Hao wanted to use this name to scare me and the fatty, but he miscalculated. The fatty and I weren't people from the Blessed Land. We had always been cultivating in the mortal world, so we had never heard of the name Jade Beauty, Sword Monarch. However, that Li Yuan was worth paying more attention to. If what Zhao Hao said was right, it was no wonder that the old man's gaze was fixed on the fatty from start to finish, as if he couldn't wait to kill him. It turned out that he was here to take revenge for Li Yuan. Battles were originally based on one's own abilities. Injuries and deaths were expected. Since he had implicitly allowed Li Yuan to represent the Xuanda Wonderland of fight, the current situation should also be expected. Furthermore, the fatty didn't kill Li Yuan, so it was unreasonable for Li Yuan to be so fierce and come to seek revenge. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Zhao Hao thought that his words were effective. His aura increased, and he prepared to say a few more harsh words. However, I came back to my senses at this moment and interrupted him. On the stage, it's all based on one's own abilities. You have your methods, and I have my countermeasures. Let's not waste time talking. Let's fight on the stage. Although I didn't know what he was planning, I couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this kind of person, let alone say anything. Zhao Hao's aura stagnated, and he gloomily smiled at me. He didn't say anything else, and took the Jade Beauty, Sword Monarch, Hu Yurong, and the old man called Li Yuan up the stage. I looked at their backs and told the fatty to be careful when he fought with Li Yuan. After the fatty walked up the stage, I turned to look at Ah Fu, preparing to tell him to be careful as well. However, Ah Fu's expression was frighteningly ugly. Seeing that I turned to look at him, he opened his mouth and said in a low voice, "Saint, you and young Master Lin grew up in the mortal world, so you don't know much about the matters of the blessed and heavenly lands. Thus, you aren't very clear about Hu Yurong and Li Yuan's abilities. Take that Li Yuan, for example. When he just entered the glorious consciousness realm, he became the public enemy of the 72 blessed lands. In order to capture him, the 72 blessed lands united and launched no less than 100 attacks. Their manpower ranged from the glorious Earth Master to the Heavenly Seal Master. There were many times when they almost killed him, but he killed them all. Because of this, the Xuanda Wonderland dared to go against the heavens and go against the opinions of the masses to take him under their wing. Young Master Lin, I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to meet him. Hearing that, I furrowed my brows and raised my head to look at the sinister old man on the stage. This person was able to escape the joint attacks of the 72 blessed lands, so he was definitely a ruthless character. Moreover, he had killed them several times. This Li Yuan was indeed worthy of the title of the first person in the glorious consciousness realm. However, I still had confidence in the fatty. He had the 9 bends, yellow river formation, and many talismans. Even if he didn't have a 100% chance of winning against Li Yuan, it wasn't as impossible as Ah Fu had said. From what I could see, the fatty's chances of winning were higher. I comforted Ah Fu and told him not to worry. There was definitely no problem with the fatty. Only then did he calm down. However, when I immediately asked about Sword Sovereign Yurong, Hu Yurong's expression tensed up again. According to Ah Fu, Hu Yurong was the same as Li Yuan. Originally, she wasn't from the Xuan'da Wonderland. Instead, she was from one of the 72 blessed lands. 10 years ago, this person had emerged as a new force, and no one in the 72 blessed lands was a match for him. Moreover, he was obsessed with cultivation. After he couldn't find an opponent in the 72 blessed lands, he started to look for the 36 lesser wonderlands. He started from the Jinhua Wonderland, and he had never been defeated. It wasn't until he reached the gate of the Xuan'da Wonderland that he finally hit a wall. In that battle, both sides fought for hundreds of rounds without a clear winner. In the end, he was defeated by Zhao Hao's father by 1 move. Then, according to the agreement, he entered the Xuan'da Wonderland and became their foreign official. After that, in less than 3 years, he learned the sword cultivation techniques of the Xuan'da Wonderland and challenged Zhao Hao's father again. This time, the two of them were equally matched. After that, there were no more news about this person. However, it was said that his strength had surpassed the Yang spirit realm. It was no wonder that Ah Fu's expression became fearful when he saw him. It turned out that there was such a story behind it. If Li Yuan's counterattack under the siege of the 72 blessed lands was a miracle, then Hu Yurong's story was simply crazy. He had challenged the blessed lands all by himself. How strong was he? If Ah Fu met him now, what were his chances of winning? Ah Fu seemed to see through my worries. He bowed and promised me, "Holy Sage, I might not be Hu Yurong's opponent, but I will try my best. As for the other 2 matches, I will have to rely on you and young Master Lin." I nodded, signaling him not to worry. Then, I led him to the arena. Chapter 632. When I walked up to the stage, Zhao Hao was already standing there waiting for me. Seeing me come up, he fiddled with the ancient sword in his hand. His gaze passed over the sword's edge and looked straight at me. "Zhou Yi, you're not my opponent. I'll give you one last chance. Hand over the king's sword, and I'll spare your life." There are only 2 matches today. Other than the match between our Wangwu Heavenly Abode and Xuan'da Heavenly Abode, the other match will be held in the West City Mountain Heavenly Abode and Weiyu Mountain Heavenly Abode. These 2 are ranked 2nd and 3rd among the 10 great heavenly abodes and are old rivals in the arena of the Heavenly Grand Ritual. Therefore, compared to the 2 of them, the match between us and Xuan'da Heavenly Abode is more eye-catching. One was the previous champion, while the other was a rising star. In addition to the fact that Wangwu Wonderland was weakening day by day, and Zhao Hao had suddenly brought in 2 helpers, who knew how many people were prepared to see Wangwu Wonderland become a joke. After listening to Zhao Hao, I shook my head and smiled. I couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. What sword suits what person? Zhao Hao, you're not worthy of that king's sword. Zhao Hao had seen the Xianyuan sword, but he had never seen the 2 words Xianyuan on the sword case. He had always referred to it as king's sword. At this moment, as we stood on the arena, the fact that I possessed the king's sword would definitely spread throughout the entire Wonderland. Although I still didn't know what the king's sword truly meant, the Xianyuan sword was one of the 10 major ancient divine instruments. Its reputation was definitely greater than this king's sword. Thus, I followed Zhao Hao's words and referred to the Xianyuan sword as king's sword. Hearing that, Zhao Hao sneered again. What sword suits what person? What you said is correct. Since that's the case, let's see who's worthy of it. At this moment, the notary announced the start of the match. My right hand trembled as I got into a stance. Zhao Hao stopped sneering and took several steps forward. He actually didn't use any sword techniques as he brandished the ancient sword to attack me. Zhao Hao is at the great perfection realm of the Seal Heavenly Master and is only a step away from the Yang God Heavenly Master. Currently, I am only at the middle stage of the Seal Heavenly Master, and there are still 2 realms between me and him. The reason why I am not afraid of this battle is not because of my realm, but because of the Heavenly Dipper 9 steps, the emotional sword Dao, and many other methods. Seeing his actions, I didn't hold back and used the Heavenly Dipper 9 steps. Under its effects, my power skyrocketed, reaching the realm of the seal completion. At the same time, I chanted the Jin mantra to slow him down. When he broke free from the mantra shackles, his momentum of charging forward had already been reduced, and his initial advantage had also disappeared. Even though he had lost the initiative, Zhao Hao's expression didn't change in the slightest. He quickly calmed down, wielded his sword with both hands, and used the simplest move to attack me. Zhao Han, who I met on the arena the other day, had a famous Bahuang sword. As the leader of the Xuanda Paradise, the ancient sword in Zhao Hao's hand was naturally very mystical. Even when it went head-to-head with the armor-dismantling sword, it didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. Previously, when Zhao Hao ambushed me, the 2 of us had exchanged blows. However, at that time, Zhao Hao wanted to end the battle quickly, so he mainly controlled his sword slave and didn't reveal too much of his own power. However, it was different this time. Every attack of Zhao Hao's came from his own chi. His sword chi was righteous, and there were a few times when the tip of his sword almost brushed past the bridge of my nose. If I hadn't reacted in time, I would have been injured. However, his swordsmanship seemed to be mainly focused on offense. His movements were bold and unrestrained, and he didn't care about his own defense at all. The moment we clashed, his loose Taoist robe was instantly pierced by the armor remover sword. His situation wasn't much better than mine. As Zhao Hao revealed an opening again, I mobilized my true yuan and slashed down. A dark yellow light shot out from the armor-dismantling sword and headed for the energy ocean below Zhao Hao's abdomen. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and used the ancient sword to block in front of him to block the attack. Although the ancient sword in his hand was magical, and after blocking the sword light, the ancient sword wasn't damaged at all. However, the huge power couldn't be reduced. Zhao Hao staggered a few steps back, and using the ancient sword as a support, he managed to stabilize himself. He lowered his head to look at the tattered Taoist robe on his body, and instantly rage appeared on his face. He opened his mouth and spat out true yuan. After the ancient sword in his hand was bathed in true yuan, a few green-black patterns appeared on it. It gave off a cold glow. Zhao Hao roared at me like a tiger. "Zhou Yi, you're asking for death." When he said that, he raised his hands and clouds appeared around him. "It's here." I flipped my right hand and used the hidden edge emotionless sword path to prepare for his next attack. Clouds appeared around Zhao Hao. It was the starting stance for his cloud-swallowing sword technique. In the previous round, he had relied on the cloud-swallowing sword technique to win in a battle between 2 strong opponents. After observing his previous battle, I had thought that he would use the cloud-swallowing sword technique as a killing move. I didn't expect that he would use it right from the start. If I wasn't wrong, besides the cloud-swallowing sword technique, Zhao Hao definitely had other killing moves. The power of the emotionless sword path was extraordinary, but it was rather simple to use. Compared to the complicated sword techniques in Xuanda Cave, this was the real deal. Soon, Zhao Hao's cloud-swallowing sword technique was ready. He pushed his hands forward, and his figure hid in the surrounding white clouds as he ran towards me. I couldn't see Zhao Hao's movements clearly, but as I got closer, the white clouds around Zhao Hao spread out and enveloped me. I was originally on high alert, but with the white clouds wrapped around me, I couldn't help but relax. I almost couldn't hold the armor-stripping sword. Good fella. After experiencing Zhao Han's petrifying dragon mantra and witnessing Li Yuan's prairie blazing sword art, In addition to the previous Heavenly Master's miserable state under the clouds swallowing sword art, I thought that all sword arts focused on ferocious attacks. I didn't expect that Zhao Hao's cloud swallowing sword art focused on shaking one's mind. It was no wonder that the previous Heavenly Master didn't even have the power to retaliate against Zhao Hao. So that was the reason. I bit the tip of my tongue and forced myself to be alert. I waved my right hand, and the emotionless sword surged out along with the armor-stripping sword in my hand. I took the initiative to attack the white clouds that were wrapped around Zhao Hao. The distance between Zhao Hao and I wasn't too far. Adding on the fact that he was closing in with all his might, he was currently extremely close to me. That was why when the armor-stripping sword was thrust out, the sword chi flew out and landed on the white cloud, giving off a series of cracking sounds. In an instant, the thick white cloud was dispersed. Even though Zhao Hao was slightly surprised, he guessed that I wouldn't be fooled by his move. The corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Using his lower limbs as support, he leaned back with all his might. In the end, he had to use his sword to cover his face to avoid the attack. The emotionless sword technique was swift and violent. To be able to break Zhao Han's petrifying dragon spell in one strike, it was truly swift and violent. However, the emotionless sword technique was different. Even though the emotionless sword technique's power was similar to the emotionless sword technique, the emotionless sword technique's main point was that it was unstoppable. At that moment, Zhao Hao's rhythm had been disrupted by me, so he couldn't organize an effective counterattack. My true essence wasn't consumed much, so how could I ignore it? I clenched my teeth and took a step forward with my right leg. I charged into the scattered white clouds and raised the armor-stripping sword. The second stance of the emotionless sword technique broke through the air and headed straight for Zhao Hao's legs. Even though his legs weren't fatal, if I attacked them, Zhao Hao's rhythm would definitely be affected. Immediately after, I used the third stance of the emotionless sword technique to further pressure him. With that, the rhythm of the battle would fall into my control. At that time, no matter how strong Zhao Hao's cultivation was, the only outcome would be defeat. The sword chi tore through the air. Although Zhao Hao blocked half of it with his sword, his legs were still swept by the aftermath of the sword chi of the second style. He was unable to react in time, and his whole body directly fell from the white mist to the ground. Seeing that, I couldn't help but feel joy in my heart. Just as I was about to use the third stance of the emotionless sword technique, Zhao Hao, who had fallen to the ground, suddenly revealed a strange smile and said eerily, "Zhou Yi, did you think that my cloud swallowing sword technique was only this?" I frowned. I didn't know if he was trying to save his face or if he really had other plans. While I was still thinking, Zhao Hao had already made his move. He hooked his little fingers, and the sword that had fallen to the ground circled around him, wrapping around the scattered white clouds as it charged up. Zhao Hao's attack was different from the previous one. It carried an indomitable aura and came at me extremely quickly. I waved my right hand and switched from offense to defense. Before I could use the power of the armor-stripping sword, a sharp aura rushed towards me. I cursed inwardly. My body sank, and I decided to stop defending. I held the sword with both hands and used the third stance that I had prepared. The emotionless sword technique had a total of 7 stances. In the first 6 stances, every 3 stances had the effect of superimposing an attack. The 7th stance's effect was even more extraordinary. This was also the reason why I didn't even use the Celestial Master Seal when I was fighting against Zhao Hao. Coincidentally, the third stance had the effect of superimposing an attack. With this stance and the Heavenly Dipper 9 steps, I was confident that even if I couldn't severely injure Zhao Hao, I would at least be able to completely block Zhao Hao's meticulously prepared move. My breathing slowed down. At that moment, all the noises in the surroundings disappeared. Time also slowed down. I lowered my head to take a look. Zhao Hao's ancient sword was like a spiral as it tore through the air with an increasingly large cloud tail. The sword aura was extremely sharp. In an instant, it collided with the armor-stripping sword's blade Wang. I didn't know which sword had let out a buzzing sound, but my body froze. Immediately after, a strong sense of weightlessness rose from my mind and spread to my entire body. The impact from the collision of the two weapons sent me flying. Hearing the unceasing sound of the wind blowing past my ears, I could finally relax. Even though I had been sent flying after the collision, this move was definitely the ultimate move that Zhao Hao had prepared for me. As long as I could block this move, I liked to see what else he had up his sleeve. Chapter 633. As soon as Zhao Hao said that, I had a bad premonition. My mind raced, but I couldn't think of a way to deal with it. The huge wave that had pushed me away suddenly started to shrink. White clouds appeared out of nowhere and pulled me back. My head, which had just started to clear up, once again fell into a dizzy and weightless state with Zhao Hao's move. I moved my arms and legs in an attempt to break free from the white clouds. But the moment I moved my fingers, the surrounding white clouds became even fiercer. It was as though they had grown arms and kept pulling at my clothes and hair. At that moment, Duijia's voice rang in my head. "Kid, close your eyes and stop. Don't struggle in vain." After Duijia was injured by Gu Yanran, he fell into a coma again. I followed Song Feng's instructions and placed him with the Xin Yuan sword every day and night, except when I was fighting an enemy. I used the Xin Yuan sword's sword energy to nourish him. I didn't think that Duijia would recover so much in just 2 days. Although he couldn't help me fight, he could already guide me in battle. This meant that he wouldn't take long to recover. I had absolute trust in Duijia. I could easily defeat Zhao Han and learn Song Feng's emotive sword technique because of him. So, he definitely wouldn't harm me. I listened to him and no longer struggled. I closed my eyes and let the white clouds created by Zhao Hao's true essence pull at my hair. After a while, I could clearly feel that the strength of the white clouds pulling at me was gradually lessening. Seeing that I wasn't resisting anymore, Duijia said again, "This cloud-swallowing sword technique is the ultimate inheritance of Xuanda Wonderland. It's a sword technique that only the previous leaders of Xuanda Wonderland can practice. Kid, you've hit a steel plate today. Only the leaders can practice it. The cloud-swallowing sword technique is that powerful?" Duijia seemed to hear my thoughts and said slowly, "This sword technique is different from all the other sword techniques in Xuanda Wonderland. It doesn't focus on killing in one hit. Instead, it's like a torrent. The more you struggle, the easier it is for you to get hurt." Back then, Song Feng and I had just started out with 2 sharp swords. We thought that we were invincible in the way of the sword. Coincidentally, the 2 of us fought with the Xuanda Grotto's sect leader at that time. We almost drowned in the torrent. No wonder Duanjia was so confident. It turned out that he had already fought with the cloud-swallowing sword art before. Come to think of it, even an ordinary member of the Xuanda Grotto Heaven, like Li Yuan, had powerful skills like the Prairie Fire Sword spell. How could Zhao Hao, as the young master of the Xuanda Grotto Heaven, only know some insignificant skills that could enchant one's soul and make one relax? That method of bewitching the divine soul earlier was just the foreplay. The more powerful method was still at the back. I felt the force on my side diminish until I couldn't feel it anymore. I became anxious. Even sheath, edge, and armor removal were no match for this cloud-swallowing sword art. How should I deal with it today? Although my eyes were closed, I could still feel that I wasn't standing on the ground but floating in the air. Adding on the fact that the clouds were borrowing force to attack me, I wouldn't be able to use them in a short period of time, even if I had a great trick up my sleeve. I clenched my teeth and calculated in my mind. Even if the cloud-swallowing sword art was strong and flawless, Zhao Hao was not a god. There would come a time when his quintessential essence would be exhausted. For the time being, I had to be patient. When Zhao Hao's quintessential essence ran out, that would be the time for me to counterattack. With that in mind, I took a deep breath and temporarily dispersed the quintessential essence around my body. At the same time, I focused my mind and sensed Zhao Hao's condition, preparing for my final attack. After sensing my movements, armor removal seemed to understand my thoughts. The old voice resounded again, wrong. Borrowing force to attack is only one of the characteristics of the cloud-swallowing sword art. If it was that simple, it wouldn't have been the ultimate inheritance of the Xuanda Grotto Heaven. The most powerful part of this sword art isn't the torrent of water used to trap the enemy, but the final move, twist. Twist? I frowned. Before I could ask again, I heard Zhao Hao's voice from afar. Unlike the useless pleasantries from before, he only said 2 words this time. Twist. The chilly voice was wrapped with boundless, ferocious aura. Before I could react, Armor Removal's voice resounded again. His tone became obviously urgent as he hastily said to me, "Now, get rid of all distracting thoughts and use the strongest power to break through the shackles." I could hear the urgency in his voice and immediately opened my eyes. I didn't have the time to ask any more questions and immediately summoned the Celestial Master Seal. Using the seal's power, I used the Armor Removal sword in my hand to execute the 7th move of the Emotion Sword path and attack the direction where Zhao Hao's voice came from. Armor Removal had asked me to use my strongest move. This was the strongest move that I could use at the moment. Since I had already lost the Heavenly Dipper 9 steps while I was in the air, I summoned the Celestial Master Seal. My Celestial Master Seal had the words Natural Sane in it. It was the highest existence among all the Celestial Master Seals. Even though it wasn't as direct as the Heavenly Dipper 9 steps in terms of attack power, its effect was definitely better. Furthermore, it had the last move of the Emotion Sword path, making its power even more impressive. With the additional power of the Armor Removal sword, the broken body of the sword emitted a resplendent sword light. It was as though a pearl that had been covered in dust for a long time was emitting light again. I could clearly feel that Zhao Hao's cloud-swallowing sword technique had stopped. As the cloud-swallowing sword technique stopped, the torrent surrounding me also froze. Taking advantage of this opportunity, I hastily looked around to assess my surroundings. I was currently floating in the air. The white clouds that had previously surrounded me had all retreated to a distance of 3 feet away from me, as though they were stars surrounding the moon. After Zhao Hao said the word strangle, those previously soft and soft clouds had actually turned into countless large sharp blades that hovered in the air. As long as Zhao Hao gave the order, they would pounce on me and turn me into minced meat. It really was a strangle. Below me, Zhao Hao was still lying on the ground, looking at me from afar. His 10 fingers were facing each other as he slowly closed them in front of his chest. After noticing that I was looking at him, Zhao Hao opened his mouth and spat out 2 words. Due to the obstruction of the sword, aura, and the torrent, I couldn't hear his voice. However, from the shape of his mouth, I could tell that he was saying goodbye. At that moment, Armor Removal sword's voice sounded again. It sounded even more anxious than before. It sounded like he was roaring. "Don't be in a daze. Follow the sword, aura, and escape from here." Escape? I had already used my strongest attack. As long as I hit Zhao Hao, I would be able to obtain victory in this battle. Why'd I have to run? Although I didn't understand the reason behind Armor Removal sword's words, I subconsciously chose to believe him. I used the remaining shaman energy and true yuan in my body to follow him. Almost at the same time that I left my original spot, the cloud blades that were 3 feet away from me started to roll. They were like rapidly advancing wheels that crushed the vacuum. In a short moment, they collided with each other. Seeing that, I couldn't help but feel scared. I didn't dare to imagine what would have happened if I hadn't listened to Armor Removal sword's words and stayed where I was. I used all of my true yuan in my body to avoid many cloud blades. It took me a full 10 breaths to catch up to the sword aura that I had released earlier. In front of me, behind me, front, back, left, and right, there were countless cloud blades closing in on me. Sometimes, the speed at which the sword aura broke through the cloud blades was slightly faster. I could almost feel the murderous intent that was leaking from the cloud blades. I already knew what kind of effect the combination of shaman energy and Tao energy would have when I was at the Metaphysics Association's headquarters. However, it was my first time combining shaman energy and Tao energy after breaking through to the Celestial Master rank. The combination of the two was already very sharp. With the addition of the Armor Removal sword, it was even more powerful when breaking through the cloud blades. However, The cloud swallowing sword's miraculousness aside, the cloud blades in front of me were broken by the two sword auras. However, after the sword auras passed through, the white clouds continued to condense into new cloud blades. It made me feel as if there was a blade on my back. My back was drenched in sweat several times. As the two sword auras broke through the last layer of cloud blades, I finally broke through Zhao Hao's cloud-swallowing sword. Zhao Hao clearly didn't expect that I would be able to break through the encirclement. The moment he faced me, his pale face revealed a trace of fear. Some of that fear came from me, but most of it came from the two sword auras in front of me. It was a sword aura that could break all techniques, and it was also a sword aura that could take his life. I looked at Zhao Hao's pitiful face through the sword auras. In the end, I couldn't make up my mind to take his life. However, I didn't give him a good ending either. I just controlled the sword aura to attack his right arm. Zhao Hao was arrogant, and it wasn't a bad thing. However, he was too arrogant. He was so arrogant that he couldn't accept failure. When the sword aura cut off his right arm, Zhao Hao fainted. It was just as I had expected. Although steel was hard, it was easy to break. As Zhao Hao fell into a coma, the result of this battle was obvious. I didn't need to say more. Officer Wong, who had been waiting in the audience for a long time, rushed to the stage with the notary. I guess the fact that I had been swallowed by the cloud-swallowing technique had scared him. Now that he saw that I had returned safely, his eyes actually reddened. I patted his shoulder to tell him that I was fine. Then I walked down the ring with him. You could have killed him. Before I left the ring, I heard the voice of the armor removal sword in my mind. Zhao Hao had ambushed me first, and then he had been my enemy. We had a deep grudge against each other. Killing him now might be the best choice. Chapter 634. The sound of his armor being removed was very weak. Seeing that I didn't accept the suggestion, he stopped breathing. I called out to him in my heart, but he didn't respond. He had been accumulating power for 2 days and had just woken up. He must have fallen asleep again. I walked down the stage with Officer Wong. He was still worried and kept asking about my situation. After I confirmed it, he finally felt relieved. After sitting down, our gazes were quickly attracted by the other 2 matches. This is the second to last round of the Heavenly Grand Ritual. If we win today, we will be able to take another step towards the position of champion. If we lose, the best result we can obtain is 3rd place. The cultivation resources we will obtain will be far inferior to what the champion will obtain. This was just a loss on the surface. More importantly, with the Wong family's current situation, if we didn't get the champion position, the situation would become complicated. The Blessed Lands had existed for thousands of years, and no family was kind. The Wong family was weak, and only the Schwanda Wonderland had jumped out. It wasn't because the other Wonderland were kind, but because they weren't sure how much power the Wong family had accumulated over the years. Therefore, the Wong family couldn't show any weakness. If they couldn't get the champion position, it would be hard to say what the other Wonderlands would do. Although Officer Wong hadn't told me about this, I had seen it clearly in the past few days. I had won a point against Zhao Hao, but this point wouldn't be the deciding factor. If I wanted to win, I would have to rely on Fatty and Fu. Since the start of the All-Heaven competition, the 3 of us have always crushed our opponents. Even though we've occasionally been caught by our opponents, we've always been able to win all 3 rounds. Even our opponents, the Schwanda Paradise, haven't had this kind of achievement. They had lost a point in the 2nd round, so Zhao Hao had to go up early. Of course, we wouldn't be able to keep our record now. I glanced at Afu's arena. It was the same as what he had told me before he went on stage. He was having a hard time. In the previous battles, Fu had suppressed all the Yang God celestial masters. Even Ji Wubbing of the 3 emperors, while Paradise was no match for him. However, after encountering Sword Lady Yurong, he seemed to be afraid and did not take the initiative to attack. He had been walking conservatively. Sword Lady Yurong, on the other hand, took advantage of his caution and forced Fu to be flustered. As the strongest combat force in Wangwu Grotto on the surface, Fu could not be said to be weak. However, Fu was strong, and Hu Yurong was even stronger. Facing this existence who had challenged the entire blessed enclave by himself 10 years ago, it would not be easy for Lu Jinyang to defeat him without using the Qiyu battle axe. Fu once again blocked Hu Yurong's attack and was forced to the edge of the arena. In the end, he relied on the Celestial Master's ability to fly to avoid being pushed off the arena by Hu Yurong's sword. I looked at the arena that had been ravaged by the sword energy. It wasn't hard to imagine how many times Fu had faced such a situation during the time I had fought with Zhao Hao. At this moment, Fu took the initiative to attack. He floated behind Hu Yurong. Before he landed, he made a series of hand seals. As soon as his toes touched the ground, the Celestial Master's Yang God floating above his head turned into a stream of light and aimed at Hu Yurong's back. Fu's attack was majestic, but anyone with a discerning eye could see that he didn't have enough energy after such a torrential attack. It was obvious that he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Fu noticed my gaze. For some reason, I nodded at him, indicating that he didn't need to worry. I had already won Zhao Hao's match. After understanding what I meant, Fu nodded. He carefully controlled his movements and weaved around Hu Yurong's sword energy. He looked like he was in a difficult situation. Officer Wang didn't understand what Fu meant. He asked doubtfully, "Fu, what does he mean?" I sighed. He was a smart man. It was impossible that he didn't know Fu's intention. Fu was so cautious because he was waiting for the fatty's result. Although I had won this match, it wasn't enough to enter the next round. Wangwu Grotto Heaven needed to win one more match. He didn't know the fatty's result, so he didn't dare to use his full strength. He was afraid that he would be defeated prematurely. At that time, the fatty would also be defeated by Li Yuan, and Wangwu Grotto Heaven would be defeated. He was so cautious. As long as he persisted, even if the fatty was defeated, he would still have the power to fight back. As for what method he would use to fight back, I didn't need to think too much to know from Fu's expression that he was unafraid of death. Officer Wang had been with Fu for many years. Although they had to address each other as master and servant due to the rules of Wangwu Grotto Heaven, in his heart, Fu's position was even higher than that of his two granduncles, who were always in seclusion. Knowing Fu's thoughts, he wouldn't feel good. I put my hand on Officer Wang's shoulder and comforted him. "Don't be nervous. Uncle Fu will be fine." Officer Wang clenched his fists, bowed his head, and mumbled, "Yeah." I didn't look at Fu for the time being. I turned to look at the arena between the fatty and Li Yuan. Officer Wang's eyes also followed my gaze. I thought that Officer Wang would be relieved if he didn't look at Fu. Unexpectedly, when Officer Wang turned to look at me, his face became more tense. I frowned as I figured out what was going on. In a sense, the outcome of the fatty's match was related to Fu's life and death. Compared to Officer Wang, I didn't have much contact with Fu. However, he had helped me many times. In my heart, I had always regarded him as a senior who took care of me. Therefore, I was no less nervous than Officer Wang. My eyes were fixed on the fatty's match. Li Yuan was worthy of being the strongest expert in the Blessed Enclave. His strength was extraordinary. Coupled with Li Yuan's grudge against him, the old man didn't show any mercy when fighting with the fatty. His moves were more ruthless than the previous one. Fortunately, the fatty had enough talismans and strong formations. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to hold on until now. After forcing Li Yuan to retreat with a silver talisman, the fatty's face became ruthless. He waved his right hand and summoned the jade sword he had taken from Li Yuan. The fatty looked at Li Yuan and said from a distance, "Old Viper, this is what you want, right?" Li Yuan didn't say anything, but his eyes became more gloomy as he looked at the fatty. He waved his right hand and spat out a fiery red jade sword. Then, he made a hand seal and sent the jade sword and his Dao sword into the sky. The jade sword and the Dao sword met in the air, leaving a long flaming tail behind them. Then, they fell from the sky. At the same time, the flaming tail expanded like a peacock spreading its tail, bringing with it waves of heat. It was the sword technique that Li Yuan had used in the past. It was called the Prairie Fire Sword Technique. However, compared to Li Yuan's technique, the technique that his grandfather, Li Yuan, had used was much more powerful. After Li Yuan had done that, the fatty threw the small Dao sword in his hand into the sky. In a flash, flames surged, and a bright peacock appeared in the arena. It was the prairie fire sword technique again. Li Yuan's prairie fire sword technique wasn't enough to deal with Li Yuan. The fatty knew this, so his hands didn't stop moving. He quickly threw out the items to set up the formation. Soon, yellow smoke rose, and the 9 bends yellow river formation appeared again. Looking at this formation, my heart calmed down a little. Although Li Yuan was Li Yuan's grandfather and was known as the first cultivator in the Glorious Era, he only had the Glorious Era cultivation base. After resisting the fatty's talismans and formations, he used the prairie fire sword technique again. No matter how strong he was, how much Taoist energy could he have? If he had tried his best to attack and suppress the fatty so that he couldn't use the 9 bends yellow river formation, he would have had a chance to win. However, the fatty had already used the 9 bends yellow river formation. Together with Li Yuan's jade sword, Li Yuan's defeat was certain. Just as I had guessed, when Li Yuan's figure disappeared, the 2 dazzling peacocks in the arena were swallowed by the yellow smoke. After 10 breaths, the entire arena was filled with yellow smoke. I looked at Officer Wong and told him, "Don't worry, we've won this match." Officer Wong looked at the fatty's 9 bends yellow river formation in surprise. Although it wasn't the first time the fatty had used this formation, Officer Wong hadn't been there at that time, so he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. While Officer Wong was still in shock, the yellow smoke became more and more ethereal. Eventually, it all returned to the ground, revealing the fatty and Li Yuan. The fatty was still sitting cross-legged in the same place as last time. As for Li Yuan, he was unconscious next to the fatty, just like Li Yuan. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to keep his cultivation base. However, it just so happened that the fatty had used up all of Li Yuan's Taoist energy during the battle, and now he had Li Yuan's Taoist energy to fill the gap. The grandfather-grandson duo had become the fatty's Taoist energy supply. As the arena quieted down, the notary quickly came to the stage and checked Li Yuan's condition. After confirming that he had lost the ability to fight again, he announced the result of the battle to the audience. It wasn't until then that Officer Wong came to his senses. He first looked at the fatty, then at me. Without saying anything, he ran to the notary's stand and stopped the battle between Ah Fu and Hu Yurong. The fatty's victory had helped us get the ticket to the final, so Ah Fu didn't need to stay in the arena anymore. For every minute he stayed in the arena, the danger he would face would increase by a fraction. I didn't go to pick up the fatty. Instead, I followed Officer Wong and helped Ah Fu get out of the arena. Ah Fu glanced at me, then looked at the fatty who was rushing over, and stuttered. "Saint Lin, young Master Lin." Before his voice died away, he passed out. Hu Yurong was known as the #1 young spirit expert, so he wasn't easy to deal with. Ah Fu had already exhausted his Taoist energy after fighting with him for so long, so it was normal for him to pass out. I checked Ah Fu's condition. After confirming that he was fine, I felt relieved and was about to ask Officer Wong to take him back to rest. However, when I turned my head, I saw Hu Yurong coming toward us. What was he doing here? Did he not have enough fun in the arena? So he's here to pick a fight. Chapter 635. After Hu Yurong said that, he didn't wait for my reply. He just waved at me and turned to leave. I felt strange. I didn't know what he meant, but I guessed that he was a cultivator who was obsessed with cultivation. He only said that he was looking forward to the battle, but he didn't mention the grudge between me and Schwanda Wonderland. He was different from Zhao Hao. I shook my head and didn't think about him for the time being. I turned to Officer Wong and asked him to take Ah Fu to rest. Wonka did not leave. Instead, he summoned a few servants and asked them to take Fu away after giving them some instructions. After Ah Fu left, Officer Wong followed the fatty and me back to the viewing platform. After we sat down, we didn't talk and just looked at the other side of the arena. There are only 4 Grotto Heavens in the semifinals, so only West City Grotto Heaven and Weiyu Mountain Grotto Heaven are left on the stage. Our next opponent will be one of them, and whoever wins will be our last opponent. The reason why Officer Wong didn't leave with Ah Fu was that he was worried about this matter. It was different from Lu Jinyang's agreement to withdraw. When Han Wenan had agreed to withdraw, Officer Wang had been there. He knew that if West City Mountains Cave won, we would be the champion. If we lost, we would have to face an opponent that even West City Mountains Cave couldn't defeat. Moreover, Ah Fu was injured. At that time, the situation would be even worse than today. Officer Wang and I were quite nervous. Only the fat guy was carefree. I didn't see any anxiety on his face. Quite the contrary, he laughed happily and shouted, "Wow, this girl is interesting." The fatty's words made me frown. There weren't many women participating in the arena, and LV Wu was the only one on the arena. For the fatty to suddenly say that, could it be that I had misjudged her? Did something happen to her on the arena? I quickly turned my head and looked at LV Huang's arena. I saw that LV Huang was forced to retreat under the attack of Weiyu Mountains Cave's Celestial Master Zhang. Compared to the previous match, she was obviously in a difficult situation. Before she could react, the Celestial Master of Seal opposite her did not have any tender feelings for the fairer sex and kicked her in the lower abdomen. However, LV Wu was not a person to be trifled with. Seeing the other party's actions, she seemed to finally be enraged. Taking advantage of the other party's kick, she gave up on the Dharma seal and used both hands to firmly lock the other party's thigh. Then, she rubbed her body, and a body of dark green vital essence opened and closed, directly wrapping the other party. Although the Celestial Master Seal was also at the perfected realm, he was no match for LV Huang in terms of Qi of the Way. After his body was wrapped up, he mobilized his spiritual essence in an attempt to break out of the encirclement. However, no matter how hard he tried, his spiritual essence could not break through the encirclement of LV Huang's green spiritual essence. Each time, it was forcibly suppressed. Finally, the Weiyu Mountain shook the heavens. The Celestial Master Seal stopped struggling and went completely silent. LV Huang had finally won the first round. After winning this match, LV Huang was not in a hurry to leave the arena. Instead, he stood on the spot and looked up at the other two ongoing matches. Looking at her, I did not know why, but I thought of Yi Pianpian. Back then, when she was being chased by those Taoists at Longhu Mountain, Yi Pianpian had also used her dark green Qi. At that time, she seemed to be only at the consciousness glory realm. I did not know if she had broken through to the Celestial Master Seal after not seeing her for so long. With her talent, it should be possible. Thinking of Yi Pianpian, I could not help but be absent-minded. If she had not helped me back then, she would still be a free person and the vice president of the Metaphysics Association. However, because she had helped me, she had been imprisoned by the Metaphysics Association on Penglai Island. Even her freedom had been restricted. Of course, this matter might also be related to her true identity. However, I did not want to think too much about her identity. My mind only recalled the bits and pieces of what had happened between us. This time, Han Wenan's suggestion was an opportunity. No matter what, I would seize this opportunity and do my best to rescue Yi Pianpian. Having made up my mind, I came back to my senses and looked at the arena again. Coincidentally, with LV Huang's victory, the other two Celestial Masters from West City Mountain Cave and Celestial Master from Wisdom Glory Earth Master had also won in a short period of time. In the end, West City Mountain Cave had won all 3 rounds and entered the finals. Because of Weiyu Mountain Cave's extraordinary status, it was within my expectations. However, after hearing the news, I could not help but heave a sigh of relief. I had finally done what I had promised Officer Wang. With West City Mountain Cave's victory, everyone in the arena looked back and forth between us and the people from West City Mountain Cave. It seemed that they were trying to judge our strengths. In fact, it was easy to judge our strengths. After losing Ah Fu, no matter how strong the fatty and I were, the outcome would not be optimistic. Therefore, most people looked at us with sympathy and ridicule. However, it was a pity that they were destined to miscalculate. With Han Wenan's guarantee, our two families would not take action at all. LV Huang met up with the other 2 people from his family in the arena. Across the distance between the arena and the viewing platform, he glanced at us from afar. Then, he walked towards us with a group of people. Seeing this, The people who were about to leave no longer had the intention to do so. They stopped and looked at us, discussing and guessing what we were thinking. Seeing this, the fatty jumped up and clenched his fists. He looked eager. What's going on? Do they want to take action now? I looked at the fatty helplessly and shook my head. What's going on? They are Han Wenan's people. While we were talking, LV Huang's group arrived in front of us. She first bowed to me, then respectfully said, Mr. Zhou, our palace master has already left. Before he left, he specifically told me to tell Mr. Zhou that there seems to be some new news from Misty. The palace master is going to check it out first. He asks Mr. Zhou to pay more attention to the sound transmitting glyph. If there is any situation, he will immediately contact you. I nodded. Had I not heard any news from Han Wen in these days? It turned out that he had left long ago. He would worry about Yi Pianpian's matter, so I didn't need to worry about it. But now that Han Wenan had left the All-Heaven Grand Competition, LV Huang seemed to see through my doubts and said, Mr. Zhou, don't worry. When the palace master left, he gave me full responsibility for the heavenly grand ritual. The purpose of LV Huang's trip is to communicate with Mr. Zhou about the final. Do you think we should admit defeat now or wait until tomorrow? I didn't think it was a big deal when I talked to Han Wenan, but I didn't know what to say to LV Huang. I thought about it and decided to let Officer Wang make the decision. After all, it was the Wang family's matter, and I was just a helper they had invited. It was better to let him decide. Several months ago, Officer Wang had been planning to win the All-Heaven Grand Competition. Now that the best result was in front of him, he didn't care about anything else, so he hurriedly said, Anything is fine. Anything is fine. He looked a little embarrassed, and his answer made the other party not know how to respond. But LV Huang wasn't a long-winded person. He nodded and made a decision. Then we admit defeat. After saying that, she cupped her hands and left with the other two people without waiting for Officer Wang and me to respond. They went straight to the notary, who hadn't left the arena yet. She was indeed a woman from the West City Mountain Grotto. She did things swiftly and decisively. It didn't take long for the news that the West City Mountain Grotto had admitted defeat to the Wanwu Grotto. After hearing the news, the entire venue was in an uproar. Many people thought that it was inconceivable that LV Huang had admitted defeat when she was only one step away from the first place. Many people even thought that LV Huang was crazy. She obviously had a chance to win the first place, so why did she admit defeat so easily? But there were also some relatively rational people who guessed that we had reached some kind of deal. In short, everyone's face was filled with disbelief. LV Huang didn't care about other people's gazes. After announcing the news, she nodded to me and led the team out of the venue. Not long after they left, most of the people who had just exclaimed had calmed down. In fact, in this All-Heaven Grand Competition, it wasn't just the two of us who had reached an agreement. First, it was the Chanshan Grotto and Lin Shui's Luliang Mountain Blessed Land. Then, it was the Xuanda Grotto and Jiwu Cheng's Three Emperors Well Grotto. Then it was the Lingshan Blessed Land and I and the West City Mountain Grotto. No matter how much the others thought about it, the result wouldn't change. After all, it was up to the two parties to choose to admit defeat or join forces. It had nothing to do with them. It was probably because they understood this point that these people calmed down after a while of clamoring, and no one tried to cause more trouble. Officer Wang saw that everyone had left and took the opportunity to announce the next arrangements for the Heavenly Grand Ritual. He informed everyone that the new ranking of the Blessed Land would be announced at the place where the banquet would be held tomorrow evening. Then, he hurriedly left with me and Fatty. On the way back to the Holy Ji Palace, Officer Wang looked calm, but his demeanor was completely different from a few days ago. The state of being burdened with pressure had disappeared, and he had completely returned to the carefree appearance he had when I had first seen him in Chio's tomb. In fact, Officer Wang did have a reason to be happy. When his father was alive, he had suppressed the entire Blessed Land with his own strength and occupied the first place for many years. After his sudden departure, I didn't know how many Blessed Land's eyes were fixed on Officer Wang. If Wanwu Grotto didn't win the first place, The resentment of the other blessed lands for many years would erupt. I couldn't imagine what would happen at that time. Chapter 636. The experience during this period had made Wang can mature a lot. The ecstasy of victory did not last long. After returning to the Holy Ji Palace, he temporarily put the victory behind him and discussed the problem of the Wang family's mountain-protecting formation with the Fat Man. The Fat Man took out the ancient book that recorded the formation and told Officer Wang about the current progress. He also told Officer Wang about the problems they had encountered. I couldn't get involved in the matter of the formation, so I didn't want to join them. With the help of the Taoist Palace's magical ability to convert witchcraft energy, I began to meditate to recover my witchcraft energy. Not long after I sat down, the Qilin ran out of nowhere. He ignored the three of us and swayed to the gate of the Taoist Palace. His hair fluttered in the wind as he stood there majestically. The Fat Man was talkative. When he saw the Qilin, he burst out laughing. He didn't have time to discuss the formation with Officer Wang and said to me with a smile, "No wonder you said it looked like a big dog. Look at it now. It's just a watchdog. Third baby, when we go back to our hometown, we can build a house and let the Qilin squat at the door every day. That guy will look majestic." Hearing the Fat Man's words, I didn't respond, but the Qilin suddenly turned his head and coldly glanced at the Fat Man. The Fat Man shrank his head. I guessed he remembered the Qilin's heroic appearance when he broke the Wang family's formation. He smiled awkwardly and shut his mouth. Why did he have to provoke the Qilin? I scolded him. "I think you look like a watchdog. When the time comes, you and the Qilin will stand on the left and right. That will be the most majestic." The Fat Man curled his lips and muttered, "If you don't want to guard the door, then forget it. Lu Xingyang will return the devil refining gourd to me. I will catch 2 dogs and put them in there to cultivate. I will refine them into stronger big dogs to guard the door." I couldn't help but laugh. The Fat Man's head was full of strange ideas. Anyway, the devil refining gourd could enhance the cultivation of monsters. Maybe his idea could come true. After chatting for a while, I was about to continue my cultivation. Suddenly, I felt a strong wave of true essence outside the Taoist Palace. It came from a distance. Before I could react, I heard a voice outside. "Senior, I don't have bad intentions this time. I have an appointment with Zhou Yi to discuss something." "Senior?" I opened my eyes and looked outside. At first glance, I saw Lu Xingyang bowing in front of the Qilin. I was still wondering why the Qilin suddenly ran to the door and stood there. It turned out that Lu Xingyang had come. I didn't know why the Qilin was standing at the door. I don't know what kind of bad luck Lu Xingyang has. Ever since the Qilin appeared, it didn't care about anyone. Usually, when the fatty and I offended it, it didn't react at all. Wang and the Fat Man stopped and looked at the Qilin. At the door, the Qilin had the Qilin. The Qilin, the door, and the Qilin, the same of the Qilin, the door. I, Qilin Wang. The King and QT. Wang Qilin. Wang and Qilin. Qian, they I, the Qilin. I, the Wang. I, Wang. Heaven. War. Wang. And I in. Lu. Book. Wang. Lu Xingyang had fulfilled his promise. It was time for the fatty and me to fulfill our promise. Lu Xingyang had fulfilled his promise. It was time for the fatty and me to fulfill our promise. It's not that I haven't thought about the place Lu Xingyang mentioned these days. However, Lu Xingyang's way of doing things is always confusing. Moreover, after he came out of the mausoleum of the Shang dynasty, his power had increased several times. His entire body exudes a mysterious aura. I tried to guess, but I couldn't guess what kind of place it was. I could only wait for him to tell me. After walking out of the palace, Lu Xingyang looked at the Qilin behind me. He bowed again and carefully retreated a dozen steps. After making sure the Qilin was still in his original position, he looked at me. "The heavenly grand ritual is over. You should fulfill your promise, right?" When he talked to me, Lu Xingyang returned to his usual coldness. He didn't waste any time and went straight to the point. He talked about the agreement from last time. Of course, we didn't have anything to talk about. It would be strange if he came to greet me. I didn't waste any time and nodded. Tell me, when and where? 1 month from now, Jalou Habe. As he said that, he extended his hand and threw a talisman to me before continuing. Use this talisman to communicate. If I have other matters that need to be brought forward or postponed, I will inform you through this sound-transmitting talisman. I extended my hand to catch the talisman. When I lowered my head, I saw that it was another talisman. After Lu Jinyang said that, he didn't wait for my reply. He glanced at the Qilin before turning to leave. I held the talisman in my hand as I tried to guess his motive for going to Jalou Habe. Jalou. When I heard those two words, the first thought that popped in my mind was Qiyu. It was said that the Yellow Emperor fought Qiyu at Jalou and used the power of the Xianyuan sword to kill Qiyu. To prevent him from reviving, he split his body into two. One was the body, which was buried in Jui County of Hezi City. It was known as Qiyu's shoulder grave. It was the Qiyu tomb that Liang Tianxin had brought me to. Lu Jinyang had also obtained Qiyu's inheritance there. The second was the head, which was buried in Jalou Habe. It was known as Qiyu's skull grave. If Lu Jinyang wanted to go to Jalou Habe with me, it was highly possible that he wanted to find Qiyu's skull grave. However, he had already obtained Qiyu's inheritance. Why do you want to find Qiyu's skull grave? Could it be that there were some magic tools or cultivation techniques left by Qiyu in the skull grave? Or was it because the inheritance he had obtained in Qiyu's shoulder grave wasn't complete? After all, there were two Qiyu tombs, which meant that there might be two inheritances. Aside from his goal, what I couldn't understand was why he wanted me to go. Liang Tianxin had taken me to the Qiyu's shoulder grave in order to use my witchcraft energy to open the door to the tomb. Lu Jinyang didn't practice witchcraft energy, but he could freely enter and exit Qiyu's shoulder grave. From this, I guess that he could also go through the skull grave. He didn't need me. After thinking about it for a while, I couldn't figure out the reason. I put this matter aside for the time being. I put away the talisman that Lu Jinyang had given me and prepared to return to the Holy Palace. As soon as I turned around, I met Officer Wang's eyes. He looked at Lu Jinyang's back and asked me, "Holy Sage, did Lu Jinyang admit defeat last time because you agreed to this?" When Lu Qingyi and Lu Chengping agreed to admit defeat in the arena, Officer Wang wasn't there. However, I guess that he should have heard the news from Fu. I guess that he had long wanted to ask me about the agreement between Lu Jinyang and me. I didn't intend to let Officer Wang know about it. Who would have thought that Lu Jinyang would come here and tell me about it? Since he already knew about it, I didn't need to hide it. I nodded and admitted it. Officer Wang knew the relationship between Lu Jinyang and me, and he could imagine the risk I had to take. After getting the answer, he looked at me with more respect. After a moment of silence, he gritted his teeth and did not dwell on this matter any longer. He just said, "The sage and Brother Lin helped Wang can defend his position as the leader. Wang Wu Grotto Heaven will never forget your great kindness. When the protective formation is repaired, I'll arrange things here. 1 month later, when the holy sage goes to the meeting, please bring Officer Wang with you." Officer Wang wore a serious face. The fatty and I exchanged looks. We knew that no matter how much we tried to persuade him, he wouldn't change his mind. Reluctantly, I nodded and agreed. I promised to inform him when the time came. Officer Wang didn't stay in the Holy Palace for long. He told me that the heavenly grand ritual was coming to an end. As the organizer, Wang Wu Grotto Heaven had a lot of things to do. Not long after, he left. Seeing Officer Wang leave, the fatty moved closer to me and asked, "Are you going to take him with you?" I sighed and shook my head. "No, I'm not." Officer Wang had too many things on his shoulders. The entire Wang Wu Grotto Heaven was on his shoulders. I didn't need to trouble him because of me. Moreover, our future was uncertain. Except for the two reclusive granduncles of the Wang family, Officer Wang was the only one left. If something unexpected happened to him, the Wang Wu Grotto Heaven, which had existed for more than 2,000 years, would lose its inheritance. The fatty understood what I meant. Okay, he agreed and went back to the Holy Palace with me. There was still 1 month to go before the appointment with Lu Jinyang. Although I didn't know his purpose, I could guess what he wanted to do with me. In order to be less passive in the following journey, I had to practice hard and try to break through to the late stage of the seal realm within 1 month. Although I still wasn't Lu Jinyang's match, I could stall him for a while. After all, the fatty needed some time to use the devil refining gourd. In the Wangwu Grotto Heaven, both the dragon energy and the witch energy were very rich. The cultivation conditions were much better than in the outside world. Taking advantage of the fact that the West City Grotto Heaven had admitted defeat in advance, I locked myself in the palace and practiced until the evening of the next day. When Officer Wang came to the Holy Palace to look for me, I came out. Officer Wang told me that while I was practicing, the other matches of the Blessed and Heavenly Lands were still going on. By this afternoon, all the matches had ended, and the new ranking had been determined. During this process, there were inevitably some disputes. Officer Wang used his dual identity as the host and the champion to mediate for the Blessed and Heavenly Lands. As a result, he gained the friendship of many Blessed and Heavenly Lands. I felt happy for him. After that, he told me the purpose of his visit. He said that he wanted to invite me and the fatty to the banquet that would mark the end of the Heavenly Grand Ritual tonight. During the All-Heaven competition, after several days of high-intensity battles, I felt that my cultivation base was starting to loosen up. After a day of closed-door cultivation, I understood that as long as I worked hard and used the cultivation conditions of the Wangwu Grotto Heaven, my cultivation base would be able to improve further. It was even possible for me to break through to the late stage of the Seal Realm. Since I was worried about my cultivation, I didn't want to go to the banquet. The fatty liked to annoy me, but he didn't make a decision. He turned to look at me and waited for my decision. I wanted to refuse, but Officer Wang said that the All-Heaven competition depended on the fatty and me. At the banquet tonight, the other Blessed and Heavenly Lands would have their eyes on the Wangwu Grotto Heaven. If the fatty and I weren't there, it was hard to say that no one would take advantage of the banquet to cause trouble. What he said made sense. Feeling helpless, I nodded and followed Officer Wang to the banquet. The banquet was held in the same banquet hall as last time. Since I had been here once before, I wasn't surprised to see the puppets at the entrance. However, since it was the fatty's first time here, he was startled by those women. He was interested and wanted to study them. I saw that the people from the other Blessed and Heavenly Lands were all there, so I didn't want to be laughed at for being ignorant, so I quickly pulled him into the banquet hall. The fatty had grown up in an experiential school. Although he had seen a lot of banquets, the grand occasion in the Blessed and Heavenly Lands couldn't be compared to what he had seen before. After entering the banquet hall, the fatty was fascinated by all kinds of strange things. He wandered around, having fun. Chapter 637. As the host and the champion, Wang Can had a lot of things to do. After entering the venue, he excused himself and went to work. 1 hour later, Wang Can reappeared by my side. He repeatedly apologized and said that the other problems were almost solved. "Is there anything I need?" I asked. I didn't need anything, but because this banquet was after the Heavenly Grand Ritual, a question popped up in my mind while I was wandering around. I was eager to know the answer. The competition of the Heavenly Grand Ritual was never the goal, but the method to determine the right to use the true dragon veins. Since it's a competition, there are bound to be winners and losers. If you win enough battles, your original Blessed Land can climb to the top of the 36 Lesser Paradises, or even the 10 Greater Paradises. Lu Jinyang's spiritual Mountain Blessed Land and Lin Shui's Mang Mountain Blessed Land are the representatives of such winners. This means that the number of true dragon veins they have will increase from 1 to 2, or even 3. However, if they lose in the competition, they will have to hand over the true dragon veins that belong to them. If I remember correctly, among the 10 Greater Paradises, Song Mountain Grotto, which was previously ranked 10th, was defeated by Lu Jinyang and fell from the top of the 10 Greater Paradises to the 36 Lesser Paradises. This means that they will have to hand over the resources that they used to have. I wonder which family is so lucky to be able to obtain the true dragon veins from them. It wasn't difficult to understand the rules, but I didn't understand how the true dragon veins would be moved when they were divided. Over the years, I have seen quite a number of true dragon veins. The true dragon veins of the Fire God Temple, the true dragon veins of the Metaphysical Society headquarters, and the half of the true dragon veins left behind by Minister when back then. Although the true dragon veins were different in size, they were all huge creatures that couldn't be moved by human power. Even a top young god, celestial master like Hu Yuron couldn't do it. I asked Wang Ken as I pondered, "Last time, you told me that after the All-Heaven Grand Competition, the Blessed Paradises would have a new ranking and the ownership of the true dragon veins would be redistributed. I didn't ask much at that time, but I didn't understand. The positions of the Blessed Paradises wouldn't change, but if the true dragon veins were redistributed, it would definitely involve the movement of the true dragon veins. How do you move the true dragon veins in the Blessed Paradises?" The reason why I'm asking this question is not because I don't have an objective in mind. So far, I've only seen one thing that can move the true dragon vein, and that's the jade bracelet that Bayan gave me. If the Blessed Lands could also move the true dragon vein, then they would definitely have something similar to the jade bracelet. Perhaps there was a connection between the two. Moreover, when Tong Tong was residing in the jade bracelet, she told me that she had seen a woman who looked similar to Tao Wu in the jade bracelet. Therefore, all these years, I have always felt that there's a great secret hidden in the jade bracelet, and this secret is related to Tao Wu. If he could find out the secret of the jade bracelet, he might be able to solve the secret of Lao AI. Although I didn't spend much time with Lao AI, we had a very good relationship. But who exactly was Lao AI? Why was she imprisoned in the underground palace? Why didn't the damned heavenly Tao allow me to be with her? There were too many secrets in all of this. Until now, I knew nothing about these secrets, and Bai was obviously worried about something and was unwilling to tell me. So I had to find the answers on my own. After hearing my question, Officer Wang kept silent for a while. Then, he smiled and said to me, "I don't need to answer this question. The sage will know it later. I just told the sage that the redistribution of the true dragon veins will be settled at today's banquet. This is not just a nominal division based on the new rankings, but even the subsequent distribution and movement will be completed at this banquet. The division and movement of the true dragon vein will be completed at the banquet." Subconsciously, I felt that it was impossible, but Officer Wang was so sure that he wouldn't lie to me. I wanted to ask more questions, but Officer Wang seemed to have some problems. He excused himself and left. As the main character of today's banquet, it was inevitable that Officer Wang was busy. I didn't want to stop him, so I let him go. Then, I searched around the venue, tried to find something related to the movement of the true dragon vein or the jade bracelet. However, after searching for a long time, I didn't find any clues. While I was searching, a young man suddenly appeared in front of me, blocking my way. He was wearing an exquisite black suit and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, which made him look like a business elite. Standing in front of me, he raised the wine glass in his hand and said with a smile, "I didn't expect that Mr. Zhou would also come to this banquet. In this all-heaven competition, Mr. Zhou hasn't lost a single match. Brother Wang was able to keep his position, and Mr. Zhou has made great contributions. You're really a young talent." This man looked familiar. Officer Wang had introduced him to me at the banquet before the Heavenly Grand Ritual. His name was Jiang Zuan, the master of the Heavenly Eye Paradise, one of 36 paradises. In terms of wealth, he was the well-deserved leader of the paradise. Did he come here to see me? This man didn't look much older than me, but he called me a young talent, which made me a little uncomfortable. However, due to his relationship with Officer Wang, I didn't say anything. I just politely replied to him, trying to brush him off. After getting my reply, he seemed to be excited. He moved a stool next to me and sat down. It seemed that he wanted to have a long talk with me. After sitting down, he continued to talk to me. "Mr. Zhou, you have such great strength. May I know who your master is, and where do you cultivate? Why haven't I heard of your name in the paradise?" Officer Wang was still busy, and I couldn't find anything related to the jade bracelet in the banquet hall. So, I simply chatted with him and answered with a smile, "I'm just a rogue cultivator in the mortal world. Brother Jiang, you're from the paradise, so it's not strange that you haven't heard of me." After chatting for a while, Jiang Ziwen became even more intimate. He called Zhou Dongwang Brother Zhou and continued, Brother Zhou, you are mistaken. With your cultivation, you would be dazzling enough even in the blessed paradise. How could you be a nobody? I'm not talented, but I run a small business in Suzhou and Hangzhou. I know a lot about the affairs of the mortal world. May I know where you live? Where do you live? I glanced at him. I didn't know what he meant, but I still nodded and answered, Shenzhen. Jiang Ziwen smiled. Then, we're not far from each other. If I have time in the future, I'll visit you in Shenzhen. At that time, I'll have a long talk with you. This man was strange, but I noticed that he was just at the Seal realm, which was similar to me. I didn't mind him too much. After exchanging some pleasantries, I sent him away. Not long after Jiang Ziwen left, Officer Wang came. People were in good spirits, so Officer Wang was smiling. When he saw me, he said, Sage, weren't you curious about how the true dragon vein moves? Look at the platform and you'll know. I looked at the platform, and I couldn't take my eyes off it. I didn't know when, but a huge stone tablet had appeared on the empty platform. The steel was divided into 3 layers from top to bottom, and each layer had 10 or even dozens of small grids. Among these grids, some had 1 dot of light, some had 2 or 3 dots, but the most was no more than 4 dots. I understood at a glance that it was the ranking of the All-Heaven competition that had just ended. The top 10 grids of the stone tablet were engraved with the names Wanwu Grotto Heaven, Xiqing Mountain Grotto Heaven, Weiyu Mountain Grotto Heaven, and Lingshan Grotto Heaven. The lower 2 layers were the rankings of the new 36 minor Grotto Heavens and the 72 Paradise. Because of my agreement with Han Wennan, the Xiqing Mountain Grotto Heaven had only risen 1 rank, from the 3rd to the 2nd, suppressing its old rival, the Weiyu Mountain Grotto Heaven. Then, it was Zhao Hao's Xuanda Grotto Heaven. Since I had injured his arm, he didn't get the 1st place. Instead, he didn't even enter the top 3, becoming the 4th. As for Lu Jinyang's spiritual mountain paradise, because it rose from the 72 blessed lands to become the 5th of the 10 great grotto heavens, it changed its name to Spiritual Mountain Paradise. Its ranking is only below the 4 of us. Then, it was the 36 minor grotto heavens. Originally, Xuanda Grotto Heaven was the 1st of the 36 minor grotto heavens. However, because Zhao Hao had come prepared this year, he had killed his way into the top 10 grotto heavens. As a result, the Kuokang Mountain Grotto Heaven, which had just fallen out of the top 10 grotto heavens, became the new heavenly grotto heaven. Then, the 3 Emperors Well Grotto Heaven also followed, rising a lot above its original ranking. I skimmed through the rankings and found something strange. Jiang Ziwen's Tiamut Grotto Heaven had also risen from the 36 minor grotto heavens to the top 10 grotto heavens. Although it was at the 10th place, the gap was so big that it couldn't be measured by just 1 rank. Of course, what I cared about the most wasn't the rankings, but the distribution of the true dragon veins. Why did Officer Wang show me this thing? Could it be that this stone tablet was like the jade bracelet that could absorb and move the true dragon veins? Officer Wang saw my doubt and explained to me with a smile. This tablet is called the Dragon Sealing Tablet. It can mobilize the power of the true dragon veins. It will determine the distribution of the true dragon veins according to the latest ranking of the Heavenly Grand Ritual every year. Not only that, but it will also classify the true dragon veins according to their strength and condition. Then, it will automatically distribute the true dragon veins. Of course, the most important thing is that after the tablet redistributes the true dragon veins, they don't need to move the true dragon veins. The true dragon veins in each grotto heaven will automatically move. I was shocked and dumbfounded. The true dragon veins will automatically move? Although the rankings wouldn't change too much in each all-heaven competition, even the slightest change would cause countless true dragon veins to move. Some of the grotto heavens and blessed lands were close to each other, but most of them were far away from each other. With just this stone tablet, the huge true dragon veins could move thousands of miles in an instant and redistribute. How is that possible? Chapter 638. What was a true dragon's vein? It was transformed from the body of Tai Sui and was formed by the essence of heaven and earth. It was the source of Taoist qi for cultivators in the world. It was also an object that bore the fate of the world. In today's era, where the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was thin, the true dragon's vein was particularly precious. For example, in the heavenly grand ritual hosted by the Mount Wangwu Heaven, all the blessed lands were desperately competing for the ranking. If such an object was placed in a country or a dynasty, it would be a national treasure. In the blessed lands, it would be the heritage of a family. How could it be easy to move the true dragon's vein? Even if only one true dragon's vein was moved, it would still require a cultivator with profound cultivation to use their heaven-defying methods and cooperate with other feng shui masters to complete the move. It was said that the old president had moved the true dragon's vein of the Metaphysical Society back to the capital in this way, but that was only one true dragon's vein. After the heavenly grand ritual competition ended, more than 100 true dragon's veins needed to be distributed. If all of them were moved by the dragon's sealing tablet after being distributed, what kind of power would that be? It was not an exaggeration to say that it was an immortal's method. Looking at the plain stone tablet in front of me, it took me a long time to come to my senses. I was still shocked. I tried to use the Dongming technique to check it several times, but I couldn't find any clues about the dragon's sealing tablet. I couldn't help but ask Officer Wong next to me, "Do you know who made the dragon sealing tablet?" After hearing my question, Officer Wong hurriedly answered, "Sage, this tablet has been around for nearly 1,000 years. According to the ancient records, it was the first time that the Mount Wangwu Heaven won the heavenly grand ritual. After that, some blessed lands had disputes over the distribution of the true dragon's veins. However, when all the blessed lands couldn't come to an agreement, a stone tablet fell from the sky and took root in Mount Wangwu. Then, the true dragon's veins began to be distributed and moved to the blessed lands." Speaking of this, Officer Wong stole a glance at me. When he saw that I didn't look impatient, he continued, "At that time, although there was a dispute over the distribution of the true dragon's veins, the heavenly grand ritual was the biggest event among the blessed lands. The rules of the competition and the distribution of the true dragon's veins had long been set. As for the dispute, everyone was well aware of the distribution of the true dragon's veins. It was just because some blessed lands were unwilling to accept it. The number of true dragon's veins distributed by the dragon sealing tablet was completely in accordance with the rules of the heavenly grand ritual. So in the end, everyone had to acquiesce. In the following 1,000 years, the distribution of the true dragon's veins has been the same after every heavenly grand ritual. Therefore, we guess that the dragon sealing tablet was made by the immortals who had ascended to the heavenly grand ritual. Ascending to the heavenly grand ritual, the immortal realm. I murmured, "What kind of realm is it to ascend to the immortal realm?" I already knew that after condensing the yang spirit, there was still the yang spirit ascension and then the red cloud ascension. Although ascending to the heavens sounded illusory, it wasn't impossible to see or touch it. For example, Wang Can's father ascended to the heavens not long ago in Mount Wangwu. According to what I learned from the major forces, President Li of the Metaphysics Society and Celestial Master Zhang of Mount Longhu shouldn't be far from this realm, let alone the other heavenly paradises. After thinking this through, I felt much better. That day at the Fire God Temple, after Tao Wu was taken away by the heaven's will, the bronze giant's words had a deep impact on me. It was the biggest stone in my heart. As long as I didn't reach the celestial realm, I wouldn't be able to save Tao Wu. Even if it was just to save my wife, I had to go all out to reach the immortal realm. No matter how difficult the road was and what price I had to pay, I wouldn't hesitate. Since the way of heaven couldn't tolerate Tao Wu in me, it didn't matter if I changed the way of heaven and changed the sun and the moon. Now that the dust had settled on all heaven, I didn't plan to stay here for long. There was still some time before Lu Jinyang and I agreed to meet him in Hebei. I'd already told Fatty that I would go home when I had time. I had planned to go back during the Qingming festival, but I had been delayed because of what happened in Hong Kong. This time, I couldn't delay it any longer. After all, no one knew what would happen if I went to Chiyo's skull tomb with Lu Jinyang and Hebei. If something happened, I didn't know when I would be able to pay my respects to my parents. While I was thinking about my next plan, Officer Wong, who was standing next to me, suddenly called me. Sage, the migration of the true dragon veins is about to begin. It's a grand occasion that only happens once every 10 years. Wong Can's words immediately piqued my interest. Just now, I had roughly estimated that there were no less than 150 true dragon veins in the 10 great paradises, 36 small paradises, and 72 blessed lands. If all of them were moved by the dragon's sealing tablet, wouldn't it be a magnificent scene of hundreds of dragons soaring into the abyss? This was only possible in the heavenly grand ritual, which happened once every 10 years in the blessed lands. If it was in the outside world, not to mention once every 10 years, it would be impossible to see such a scene in 100 or even 1,000 years. Will all the true dragon veins be migrated at the same time? I asked Officer Wong. Sage, just wait a moment. You'll know. Officer Wong kept me guessing. He gave me a faint smile and walked away. Officer Wong didn't stop walking. He walked all the way to the ceremonial altar on the viewing platform and took a golden page from Alu. This golden page recorded the ranking of all the blessed lands after the heavenly grand ritual competition. It was written in a secret book of Mount Wangwu under the supervision of the representatives of all the blessed lands. Thanks to the support of all the Taoists, the heavenly grand ritual of Wangwu Grotto Heaven has come to a successful conclusion. According to the ancestral rules of the blessed lands, after the competition, the true dragon veins will be redistributed. The new rankings of the 10 great paradises, 36 small paradises, and 72 blessed lands are recorded on this page. Now, the dragon sealing tablet will distribute the true dragon veins. Officer Wong raised the golden page with both hands. Zhang Ji walked to the dragon sealing tablet and sang loudly. The heavenly grand ritual is to pray for the peace of the people. The competition is to encourage the people to advance. The champion of this competition is Mount Wangwu Grotto Heaven. Then Officer Wong bowed to the dragon sealing tablet 3 times with an excited face. Then he performed a hand seal. The golden page left Officer Wong's hands and slowly floated up. Then it turned into a wisp of golden air and entered the dragon's sealing tablet. It's coming, I exclaimed in my head. Then I saw the white lights on the dragon's sealing tablet flicker as if they had come to life. It looked as if something was about to jump out of it. I looked at Officer Wong. His movements didn't slow down. Quite the contrary, he sped up. His 10 fingers moved back and forth in the air, dazzling me. As Officer Wong continued to urge his hand seals, the things that had been floating on the stone tablet finally jumped out. Now, I could see clearly what those white lights were. I had just roughly counted. There were 175 light spots on the dragon sealing tablet. In other words, there were 175 true dragon veins in this Taoist sanctum. I could guarantee that if a cultivator under the glorious era stayed in this place for more than a month, his Taoist Qi cultivation base and physical strength would be greatly improved. If those true dragon veins could stay here for more than a month, they could condense no less than 10 drops of true dragon saliva. True dragon saliva was a treasure that could only be found by chance. A full true dragon vein could only condense 1 drop. In the past, my cultivation base was destroyed by the Liu family, and I had to rely on this thing to recover. Later, the snake spirit used the medicinal effect of the true dragon saliva in my blood to transform and reach the heavenly master realm. Even though I was experienced and knowledgeable, when I saw the scene of more than 100 true dragon veins soaring in the sky, I could only describe it as shocking. It wasn't just me. The young geniuses who came to participate in the heavenly grand ritual for the first time in the blessed enclave had similar or even more shocked expressions. If ordinary geomancy masters in the secular world saw this scene, they would be scared to death. Geomancy masters spent their entire lives searching for true dragon veins. If they knew that there were more than 170 true dragon veins in the Wangwu Mountain Grotto Heaven, I really don't know what they would think. Immortal means immortal means. How could this dragon sealing tablet be so powerful? How could it be something from the secular world? Just as I was looking at the dragon sealing tablet, I suddenly felt a warmth in my chest. Is that the jade bracelet? As soon as I thought of the jade bracelet, I immediately lowered my head. The jade bracelet that I had placed on my body slowly floated up in the air and emitted a faint light toward the true dragon veins that filled the sky. Right at this moment, a true dragon's vein flashed in front of me. Following a flash of light from the jade bracelet, the true dragon's vein visibly dimmed. Chapter 639. After being slightly surprised, I quickly calmed down. I've already seen the jade bracelet's effect more than twice. The first time was when I met the stone of Mount Tai in the Shenzhen Metaphysics Association. The jade ring had just met it, and it had swept away the real dragon chi in the stone of Mount Tai. I had also used the power of the real dragon chi to easily enter the realm of chi condensation. The second time was at the headquarters of the Metaphysics Association. When the jade ring discovered the true dragon's vein, it moved on its own and swallowed the true dragon's vein. I borrowed the power of the true dragon's vein, which was why I was able to cultivate like a hot knife through butter. I even borrowed its power to turn defeat into victory many times. However, it also caused me a lot of trouble. Theoretically, it was a good thing for me that Yuhuan was absorbing the real dragon aura in this place. But it was not a wise thing to absorb the real dragon aura in such a big way in front of all the blessed paradises. It would be fine if they didn't find out. I could also take this opportunity to replenish the real dragon vein in the jade ring that had been consumed a lot. However, what if I was found out? Back then, when I was in the Metaphysics Association, I was almost found out. But now, in front of all the blessed paradises, they had just started a 10-day battle for these remnants of the true dragon veins. They even risked their lives as celestial masters of Yon God. What was it for? It was not easy for the dust to settle. They were just waiting to enjoy their fruits of the battle. If they found out that their fruits of the battle were stolen by me, I would have to face a situation that even Wang Kent and Wangwu Grotto Heaven couldn't protect me. With the previous two experiences, I knew that no matter what I did at this time, it would be useless. Therefore, I could only bite the bullet and look at the jade ring. I hoped that it wouldn't be as greedy as the previous two times. I hoped that it wouldn't swallow the whole real dragon vein as it had done in the Metaphysics Association. I didn't know if it heard my prayer or if it was connected to my mind, but the true dragon veins brushed past the jade bracelet one after another. It only absorbed a little. Although there were many instances where the true dragon veins weakened, I slowly noticed the pattern. The reason why the true dragon veins had such obvious changes was that they had been overdeveloped and were extremely weak. Even if Yuhuan did not absorb the true dragon chi, there would still be obvious changes. However, it was different for the true dragons that were in perfect condition. After being absorbed by Yuhuan, there was basically no change. They still had the same majestic momentum as before. After confirming the situation, I cautiously looked around. Then, I walked to the front of the jade bracelet and placed it behind me to prevent the others from seeing me. Who would have thought that at this moment, a figure would slowly walk towards me from the white mist of the true dragon's aura? I instantly became nervous. Could it be that he had been discovered? Third baby? That person had yet to arrive, but his voice had already arrived. In the current Wangwu Grotto Heaven, who else could call him that other than Fatty? Hearing his voice, the tension in my heart lessened a lot. I answered him in a low voice, asking him to come here quickly. The Heavenly Grotto Heaven is really rich. There are actually so many true dragon veins. Third baby, even if you used to be the young Phoenix Chief of the Metaphysics Society, you should have never seen such a spectacular scene. Fatty said as he walked towards me. When he reached my side, he noticed that I was acting strangely. Fatty wasn't stupid. Seeing me like that, he became even more cautious. He imitated me and cautiously looked around. Then, he whispered in my ear what happened. I looked at Fatty. At that moment, I didn't know how to explain it to him. I had to choose my words carefully. In the end, I just didn't say anything and let him see for himself. After receiving my signal, Fatty's gaze fell behind me. At that moment, a weak, true dragon vein passed by us. After passing through the jade bracelet, it obviously became weaker. Fatty was startled by the sudden situation. His jaw dropped. After a long time, he asked this, "What's going on?" I looked at Fatty. "I can't explain it in a short time. Help me block it. After the banquet is over, I will tell you the details." Fatty and I were best friends. Seeing my reaction, he knew that the situation was urgent and that it wasn't the time to talk. He didn't say anything and stood in front of the jade bracelet with me. With Fatty's help, the pressure on me was greatly reduced. Not long after that, Wang Can's voice came from the white mist. It was different from when we had talked before. At this time, Wang Can's voice was much more serious. It even gave people a slight sense of oppression. "The heavenly grotto heaven protects our country. The heavenly grotto heaven forbids calamity. Heaven and earth unite and pray for eternal peace. True dragon, please return to your position. Dragon's sealing tablet, pardon." As soon as Wang Can's voice faded, the dragon's sealing tablet radiated a dazzling white light. The true dragon veins in the sky seemed to have sensed it. They soared into the sky and entered the clouds. Then they scattered in all directions, merging with the mountains and rivers. Each true dragon vein had only one light spot left, which entered the dragon's sealing tablet. I patted Fatty's shoulder, signaling him to relax. No one would notice. Then my eyes fell on the dragon's sealing tablet. At this moment, the dragon's sealing tablet looked even more extraordinary than before. The light spots of the true dragon veins didn't immediately merge with the tablet. Instead, they turned into tiny dragon shapes and circled around the new ranking. Then, they merged with the names of the heavenly grotto heaven and blessed lands. After what had just happened, I understood that the brighter the white spots were, the better the quality of the true dragon veins was. I originally thought that since Wangwu Grotto Heaven didn't move from the first position, the true dragon veins wouldn't change much. However, after some observation, I found that the white spots under the 4 ancient characters of Wangwu Grotto Heaven were much brighter than before. It seemed that this was the blessing of the first position of Wangwu Mountain Cave's Heavenly Guard. It seemed that the Heavenly Grotto Heaven was still the same as the secular world. The strong were respected, and everything depended on one's strength. In this way, unless there was a major accident, the strong would become stronger and the weak would become weaker. As we were worried that Yu Huan's absorption of the true dragon veins would be discovered by others, Fatty and I were absent-minded for the rest of the banquet. Seeing that the banquet was coming to an end, Fatty and I didn't want to stay any longer. After saying goodbye to Wang Can, we hurried back to the Taoist Palace. The Taoist Palace was the residence of Wang Can's father. After he ascended, no one else lived there. Although Lu Jinyang and Song Feng had been arranged to live there, people often came to visit. Lu Jinyang and Song Feng were the best examples. However, the banquet hadn't ended yet. Most of the people in Wanwu Grotto Heaven were gathered in the banquet hall. On the way back, I found that there were only a few people in the huge Wanwu Grotto Heaven. Presumably, the masters had gone to the banquet to celebrate, and the servants had their own gatherings. No one would come to disturb them. When Fatty and I returned to the Taoist Palace, I deliberately asked Fatty to set up an isolation formation. Then, I told Fatty about Yu Huan's absorption of the true dragon veins. Fatty was a smart man. Although his cultivation path was different from mine, after seeing the true dragon veins pass by the Jade Huan, he more or less guessed something. However, he felt that it was too incredible and unbelievable. But after getting my confirmation, he didn't say anything more and just asked about the origin of Yu Huan. I had absolute trust in Fatty. Moreover, since he knew that Yu Huan could absorb the true dragon veins, there was no need to hide the origin of the Jade Huan. I first said Bai An's name, and the Fatty looked at me with a puzzled face. Only when I said the 3 words, Red Shadow, did the Fatty come to a sudden realization. He joked with me. So, it's a token of love. No wonder. No wonder. I smiled wryly as I didn't know how to explain it to Fatty. However, just as I stopped smiling, Fatty continued to ask, "So, the true dragon veins of the Metaphysical Society were also taken away by this Jade Huan?" Thinking about the time, you were indeed at the Metaphysical Society's headquarters at that time. I nodded and looked at Fatty. How did you know that the Metaphysical Society's dragon veins were stolen? Fatty smiled and said, that year, after the Metaphysical Society's dragon veins were stolen, President Gu couldn't find a way to solve the problem. Thus, he came to Mount Huang Guanshan and asked my teacher to perform a divination to find the culprit. However, my teacher, along with other senior brothers, performed divination several times. Not only did we not get any results, but we also suffered a backlash. Only then did Gu Lilai give up. Speaking of which, my teacher asked me to add a formation to your Jade Huan. It was to seal the true dragon Shi in the Jade Huan so that the people from the Metaphysical Society wouldn't find it. Right? I nodded, but I felt strange. The Metaphysical Society and the Metaphysical Society had a friendship. Fatty once told me that the Metaphysical Society had helped people perform divination since ancient times. Protecting one's privacy was a principle that they abided by. That was why Gu Lilai placed his hopes on Jinren Guan of the Metaphysical Society. This wasn't strange, but I was curious about Jinren Guan. I didn't know if he had the same talent as Fatty, but since he was able to become the head of the Metaphysical Society, he definitely wasn't a simple character. I didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to find out about me. To this day, I still remember the 16 words of wisdom that Jinren Guan told me on Mount Huangguan. At that time, I didn't know what it meant. It wasn't until the 16 words came true in the corpse sect that I understood its meaning. Because of that, I was certain that Jinren Guan would be able to find out the truth. However, I didn't have any friendship with him at that time, so why would he help me hide it? Also, he helped me seal the shaman Shi in the Jade Huan and gave me the 16 words of proverb. At that time, I didn't think too much about it, but now that I think about it, everything was unusual. Chapter 640. In fact, I trusted Jinren Guan quite a bit. Just from Nangong's attitude towards him, it could explain a lot of things. However, I still couldn't see through Nangong. At first, I thought that he was a descendant of the Wu tribe and had a cultivation similar to that of Celestial Master Yangshun. However, as time passed and I learned from various sources, I found that Nangong was becoming more and more mysterious. What kind of treasure was the Xianyuan sword? It was the sword of the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan, ranked second among the 10 great ancient divine weapons. Nangong had given it to me so generously. Moreover, I also learned from Lu Jinyang that when Lu Jinyang had obtained Chiyo's inheritance in the Yin Su, he wanted to take the Xianyuan sword, but Nangong had taken it away from him. In other words, Nangong's understanding of the Yin Su was far greater than anyone else's. At one point, I even suspected that the 18 celestial masters in the Yin Su were killed by Nangong. However, after he denied it himself, I no longer thought so. I didn't know why, but Nangong had just said that he wasn't the one who killed them, but I still firmly believed it. It gave me a mysterious feeling, as if he didn't know how to lie, or that he disdained to lie. It gave me a feeling that I had no choice but to believe him. Shaking my head, I sorted out my thoughts and stopped thinking about Nangong, the mysterious guy. Because Yu Huan had absorbed the real dragon chi of the Blessed Caves, I didn't dare to sleep. After chatting with the fatty for a while, I meditated and cultivated in the Taoist palace. At the same time, I sent out a wisp of my soul sense to check the surroundings. I always maintained a certain degree of vigilance to prevent the matter from being exposed and those guys from attacking. Fatty, on the other hand, was studying the method to repair Mount Wangwu's heavenly abode formation. As he planned to leave this place in 2 days, Fatty was actively working overtime, which was a rare sight. He planned to figure out the method to repair the formation tonight. Fortunately, it was a peaceful night. Apart from feeling that the Qilin seemed to have come to the Taoist palace, no one else came near. Early in the morning, the fatty took a pile of manuscripts and left in a hurry. He said that if nothing unexpected happened, he should be able to finish it in 3 days. He asked me to wait for him for a few more days. I wasn't interested in formations, so I didn't go with them. I stayed in the Palace of Tao and slowly studied the sword-nurturing technique that Taoist Huang Zhu had given me. The fatty didn't come back until nightfall. However, Afu came and told me that the fatty had encountered some problems while fixing the defensive formation. However, it wasn't a big problem. Moreover, the fatty was very excited. He said that he wouldn't sleep until he fixed it. That's why he wouldn't come back tonight. I smiled but didn't say anything. I understood Fatty too well. Although he usually looked sloppy when he got serious, he had a tenacity that ordinary people didn't have. He was a once-in-a-century genius of the Zhanyan sect, and formations were his forte. It was normal for him to be so serious. In fact, the fat man did live up to his title of Tao Test Genius. At noon the next day, he came back with a proud face, accompanied by Officer Wang. When the fatty had agreed to help him repair the formation, Officer Wang's attitude towards him had changed greatly. At that moment, it was completely different from before. He called Lin Fan Master Lin from the bottom of his heart, and his voice was full of emotion. Looking at the situation, I knew that the restoration of the Great Formation had been completed. However, looking at the fatty's smug face, I couldn't help but mock him. What's wrong? Can't stand working overtime anymore? Don't worry, I can wait for a few more days. If you lose 10 or 20 pounds of fat, I won't be able to explain it to Uncle Lin when I get back. The fatty glanced at me indifferently. His face didn't change, and he didn't say anything. When I wasn't paying attention to him, he kicked Officer Wang with his foot. Officer Wang reacted instantly and said to me, "Sage, don't look down on Master Lin. Last night, Master Lin sat in the center of the formation for half a night. Before midnight, he had already figured out a way to fix the defensive formation. In just 2 days, the formation has been fixed. It's far beyond our expectations. Master Lin is really a formation expert." Wang Qian's attitude had changed a lot. In this way, the fat man's tale was even prouder. "Third boy, did you hear that? I told you a long time ago that all the formations in the world lead to the same goal by different means. There is nothing more than the round sky and the square earth and the flow of yin and yang. As long as you can break the formation eye, it will be a piece of cake to repair the formation. My master has long said that I am the inheritor of Zhan Tao. All right, stop. You're a genius. 1 in a million, a peerless genius. All right, look at how cocky you are." I smiled as I interrupted the fatty's cliché that I had heard countless times already. All right, stop right there. All right, fatty, you've been working hard all night. You must be tired. Go and have a rest. We'll go down the mountain early tomorrow morning. I could also see that although the fatty was still exuding a sense of excitement, it was not only the Taoist qi in his body, but also his mental strength had been greatly depleted. All right, you guys talk. I'm going to take a bath. I'm a little tired. By the way, Officer Wang, I heard that you have a spiritual hot spring on this mountain. Let me have a try, the fat man said angrily. Officer Wang agreed and asked his servant to take the fat man away. After the fat man left, I told Officer Wang that we were going to leave. When he heard that we were leaving, Officer Wang tried to persuade us to stay. He said that he would hold a farewell banquet for us. Of course, I refused him. Fatty and I didn't like crowds, and we didn't care about these common etiquettes. However, in the end, Officer Wang asked me to inform him when I went to the Qiu Skull Tomb in Hebei province to meet Lu Jinyang. To make him feel at ease, I agreed. However, I didn't want to take him with me. After all, it was a personal grudge between Lu Jinyang and me. I didn't want to drag Officer Wang into this mess. Moreover, Officer Wang was now the master of Mount Wangwu's Heavenly Grotto Heaven, and he had a lot of responsibilities on his shoulders. Although Mount Wangwu's Heavenly Grotto Heaven had won the Heavenly Grand Ritual, he still had a lot of things to deal with. After bidding farewell to Officer Wang, I went to see Yamo. He wanted to go out with me, but I refused. I left him in the heavenly cave of Mount Wangwu and asked Officer Wang to take care of him. No matter what, this trip would be dangerous. If I brought Mo along, not only would it be dangerous, but it would also be inconvenient. The last one was Kieran. Since I had witnessed Lu Jinyang's fear of him, I wanted to take him with me. However, no matter how hard I tried to persuade him, He ignored me. I asked Tong Tong to ask him, but this time, Kieran didn't even give Tong Tong face. He still didn't want to go with me. After a long stalemate, I had no choice but to give up the idea and let it stay there. Anyway, he didn't consider me his master. We could only meet again in the future. Since Officer Wong had a lot of unfinished business with the Heavenly Grand Ritual, he couldn't see us off personally. He asked Ah Fu to take us down the mountain until we reached the foot of Mount Wangwu's Heavenly Grotto Heaven. Before leaving, he gave me an item. He told me that Officer Wong had asked him to give it to me. I received it and took a look. It was a palm-sized bronze medallion. It appeared to be overflowing with an ancient charm. There were a few spells and restrictions that were unique to Mount Wangwu's heavenly abode engraved on it. There were 2 large characters on the back, Holy Protector. Below these 2 large characters was a small character, Wong. I held the bronze token in my hand and played with it for a while. Apart from those complicated restrictions, I didn't find anything special about it. I tried to inject a strand of Dao Qi into it, but there was still no reaction. After thinking for a while, I looked at the 2 characters, Sacred Guard. I guess that it had something to do with the words innate saint on my seal and the 9 Cauldrons clan that Officer Wong had mentioned. Thus, I injected a strand of shaman qi into the token. This time, the token instantly moved and all the restrictions on it began to operate. The strand of Taoist qi and shaman qi that I had injected into the token began to circulate in the restrictions. After about 1 cycle, the token suddenly lit up with a black and white light. Then, I felt a wisp of spiritual sense enter my consciousness. Right after that, a vigorous and distant voice resounded in my mind. Chapter 641. As soon as the voice echoed, I felt my body sink. Then, I felt dizzy. What the sage points to is what our tribe will do. The sage's evil is our tribe's enemy. The sage, I felt like I was outside of this world. I couldn't see anything. The world was chaotic, and only the echoes of screams echoed in my ears. Sometimes it was far, and sometimes it was close. I couldn't sense anything. "Third baby, are you all right?" The fatty's voice came to me. I shivered and bit the tip of my tongue. Under the stimulation of the pain, my mind became clear. The scene in front of me returned to normal. "Third baby, what happened to you? Both of your eyes are white, and there isn't a trace of blood on your face. I almost thought that I was possessed by a ghost. But thinking about your cultivation, it shouldn't be possible." Seeing that I had recovered, the fatty heaved a sigh of relief and asked me, half-jokingly, "That's right." I shook my head and showed the bronze token to the fatty. "I should have entered an illusory realm just now. Can you help me take a look at this token? Is there an illusory array engraved on it?" Fatty took the token and only glanced at it twice before he made a decisive conclusion. "This is definitely not an illusory array. It should be a very ancient restriction. I've seen a similar array in an ancient book in my sect, but there were no records of its specific functions. However, based on the array patterns on it, I'm guessing that it should be a defensive array." Seeing that I didn't answer, the fatty continued to ask, "What happened? Could it be that you were attacked in the illusion?" "No, I didn't. I just heard some vague sounds." Then I put the token into Xiang Lu's body and stored it. Since I couldn't figure it out for the time being, I didn't want to think too much about it. Anyway, there were too many strange things happening to me. Now that I was a reborn saint, it wasn't strange for me to have something to do with sages. As for what the token was, I would find a chance to ask Officer Wong. Then I would know. The fatty and I had played together since we were kids. He knew my character well. Since I didn't want to talk about it, he didn't ask further. After walking out of the mountain, the fatty and I came to the city. Since the fatty hadn't broken through to the Sky Master Realm, taking the plane would affect his cultivation. Hence, we took the train and headed back to our hometown. Along the way, I kept thinking about my appointment with Lu Jinyang in Zhulu, Hebei province. Because of the devil refining gourd, I felt that I owed the fatty a lot. He had lost an ancient divine tool because of me. Therefore, even though Lu Jinyang and I are mortal enemies, I have no choice but to go on this trip to Chiyo's skull tomb. However, when I thought of Lu Jinyang's terrifying strength. To be honest, I still lack some confidence. Originally, I had thought that with the Qilin accompanying me, I would at least be able to protect myself. But now that the Qilin wasn't willing to follow me down the mountain, I had lost my greatest support. Thinking about all the trump cards I had, I found that it was difficult to pose a substantial threat to Lu Jinyang. The fully recovered sacrificial evil spirit should be a match for Lu Jinyang, but now it was missing. Xiao Jin, who had been freed from the restriction, might also be able to compete with it, but I didn't know where he had gone. Although the remaining snake spirit and pupil were considered outstanding in the Heaven Master realm, they were not enough to compete with the current Lu Jinyang. With my own strength, it might be difficult to find an opponent below the Yang spirit realm. But now, Lu Jinyang had reached the Yang spirit realm, and he had the inheritance of Qi Yu. Even Fu, who was at the peak of the Yang spirit realm, was not a match for Lu Jinyang when he was in the Seal realm, let alone me. After thinking about it, I found that among all the things I had, only the Xianyuan sword could pose a threat to Lu Jinyang. However, at present, I couldn't display the true power of this ancient divine tool. If I followed the sword cultivation method that Huang Zhu had taught me and nurtured the Xianyuan sword for a period of time, maybe I would be able to use it to kill Lu Jinyang by surprise. Apart from this, I was afraid that there was no other way. Unconsciously, I found that Lu Jinyang had changed from the arrogant and despotic young master of the Metaphysics Association to a mountain that was pressing on my heart. I adjusted my mood and calmed myself down, no longer thinking about Lu Jinyang. If it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a disaster. If it was a disaster, I couldn't avoid it. The blood feud between him and me had long been irreconcilable. In the end, it had to end. Now that time was tight, I had to cherish every minute and second. Along the way, I kept meditating and cultivating. At the same time, I began to use the sword cultivation method to nurture the Xianyuan sword. From Mount Wangwu to my and Fatty's hometown, it wasn't very far. It only took us half a day to get there by train. Since we were eager to return to our hometown, after leaving the train station, Fatty and I didn't have time to rest. We took 2 taxis and went straight back to our hometown. However, when we arrived at the entrance of the village, we felt that something was wrong. Normally, we wouldn't see a single outsider for several months, but at this moment, there were 2 black off-road vehicles parked at the entrance of the village. There was no one in the vehicles, but I felt a pure aura of Tao energy in the vehicles. It was obvious that the people who had gotten out of the vehicles were cultivators with profound cultivation bases. It's the righteous Tao energy of Mount Longhu. Fatty also found the problem. He went to the side of the car and looked at it for a while. Then, he turned his head and said to me with a solemn face. At this moment, I also felt the aura of Mount Longhu from the aura of the Tao energy. I felt very anxious. Before I could say anything, a fierce wave of Tao energy came from the direction of the village. It seemed that a cultivator was using a spell. I focused and looked carefully. Soon, I sensed a trace of wizard qi in the intense and majestic fluctuation of Taoist qi. Uncle Lin, not good, it's my dad's aura. My voice and the fatty's voice rang out at the same time. Soon after, the fatty screamed in fear as he dashed towards the direction of his ancestral house. I hurried to follow him. The Taoist of Mount Longhu had chased after me because of what had happened in Yinsu. If I got Uncle Lin into trouble because of this, I would be in big trouble. When the fatty and I arrived at the Lin family's ancestral house, we saw 3 Taoists of Mount Longhu holding a Taoist sword and surrounding Uncle Lin. At this moment, Uncle Lin had a few sword wounds on his body. He held an ink-colored box in one hand and a small bronze cauldron in the other. His body was circulating his shaman energy as he struggled to fight against the 3 Taoists. His face was full of determination. What surprised me was that the 3 Taoists of Mount Longhu had the cultivation base of a heavenly master. However, Uncle Lin's shaman energy was only at the glorious world realm. Even so, he was able to resist their attacks. The reason was probably because of the ink-colored box in his hand. As for the small bronze cauldron, I recognized it. It was one of the 7 cauldrons I had collected that had the words 9 prefectures carved on them. However, as the situation was tense, I didn't have time to think about other things. The sudden appearance of the fatty and me had startled the 3 Taoist priests of Mount Longhu. However, after seeing our faces, their faces relaxed, and they looked ecstatic. It's the 3 Pure Ones' protection. I thought that we would return empty-handed. I didn't expect that we would be able to catch a remnant of the witch tribe before we left. I didn't expect that you, the main character, would also come back. The leading Taoist looked at me, his face full of surprise. As for these sanctimonious Taoist priests of Mount Longhu, I really didn't want to waste my breath on them. I had already said what I needed to say last time in the Celestial Master's mansion. Instead of finding the real culprit, they kept pestering me. I had had enough of them. However, when I was about to save Uncle Lin, the fatty beat me to it. The fat man took out 2 jade slips from his robes and casually tossed them to the left and right. He didn't seem to make any movements, but he softly chanted a few incantations. Suddenly, a burst of yellow smoke appeared out of thin air, and in the blink of an eye, engulfed the 3 Taoist priests of Mount Longhu. You're just at the glorious world realm. You've learned some crooked Taoist techniques. How dare you come out and show off? The Taoist of Mount Longhu didn't care about the fatty's yellow river of 9 bends formation. One of them looked at Uncle Lin, while the other 2 rushed out of the yellow smoke with their swords. Senior, be careful. This yellow smoke is strange. It seems to be able to swallow Taoist energy. A Taoist voice arose from the yellow smoke. It doesn't matter. It's just a crooked trick. I'll break it with the heavenly thunder. Then, the leading Taoist used his Taoist energy and drew a heavenly thunder talisman in the air, sending it into the yellow smoke. Chapter 642. The Taoists of Mount Longhu's Celestial Master sect had always been overbearing. They only recognized Mount Longhu's right and wrong, not asking for the reason. As a result, they had a bad reputation in the metaphysics world. However, Mount Longhu was the ancestral court of Taoism, so it had a great influence. Moreover, they had Celestial Master Zhang, who had a profound cultivation base and had been passed down from generation to generation. Thus, Mount Longhu had been arrogant in the metaphysics world for so many years, but it still hadn't fallen. Seeing the 2 Taoists coming toward me, I knew that the conflict couldn't be resolved. To be honest, I didn't want to worsen the conflict with Mount Longhu, but I couldn't control the current situation. If I didn't subdue these 3 Taoists first, I was afraid they wouldn't give me a chance to speak. With my current strength, it was hard to find a worthy opponent under the Yang God realm. I could even fight against an ordinary Yang God, Celestial Master with many tricks. Although Mount Longhu's Taoist inheritance was exquisite, and their talisman techniques were the best in the world, the Celestial Master Seal's cultivation base alone wouldn't be able to defeat me. Evil creature of the Wu tribe, you should surrender now. The 2 Taoists of Mount Longhu shouted at me. Their momentum was astonishing. Before their bodies arrived, their sword energies had already arrived. I felt 2 pure flows of Taoist energy and Jinshi attacking me, carrying the power of heavenly thunder. I didn't panic. I stepped on the 9-star heavenly dipper and faced the 2 sword energies head-on. The first 7 steps were completed in one go. The power of the heavenly dipper steps surged and blocked the 2 sword energies. I didn't stop. The 8th step, Dongming, and the 9th step, Star Concealment, were performed one after another. After all 9 steps, the power of the heavenly dipper step multiplied. In a flash, the 2 sword energies were shattered. At this moment, the 2 Taoists of Mount Longhu had already arrived in front of me. Without saying a word, they raised their hands and took out 2 talismans to suppress me. At the same time, they tightly grasped their swords and used the secret technique of Mount Longhu to control their Taoist swords. Their swords flew out of their hands and stabbed towards me. It seemed that the 2 Taoists wanted to take me down with lightning speed. I recognized these 2 talismans as well. They were the unique spirit-suppressing talismans of Longhu Mountain. These talismans didn't have any grade, and their power depended on the caster's cultivation. They had the function of suppressing Jin Qi. If the caster's Dao Qi cultivation was higher than the opponent's, they could easily suppress the opponent. Moreover, they could temporarily seal the opponent's Jun Qi cultivation. This was one of the most common methods used by Longhu Mountain to bully the weak. If other celestial masters were to encounter these two spirit-suppressing talismans, they might have a hard time dealing with them. However, it didn't have much of an effect on me. I had unlocked my 4 meridians during the Young Phoenix competition of the Metaphysics Association. I then used the dark green pearl that Xiao Jin had given me to cultivate Shaman Qi. When I broke through to become a celestial master, I even obtained the rare forward seal. Now that I was cultivating both Taoism and Shaman Qi, my Jin Qi wasn't something that cultivators of the same realm could compare to. I released my Dao Qi and Shaman Qi at the same time. Boundless Jun Qi surged out and instantly broke through the suppression of the two spirit-suppressing talismans. When the talismans were broken, the two Taoists suffered a certain degree of backlash. Their minds became unstable and their movements slowed down. I took the opportunity to take a few more steps towards the two of them. At the same time, I took out the armor-removing sword and gathered all of my Shaman Qi on it. With a single strike, I sent the two Taoist swords flying. When the two Taoists saw this, their expressions changed. After looking at each other, they quickly retreated and pulled a distance of 30 meters away from me. Looking at their panicked expressions, it was obvious that they didn't expect me to have such a cultivation. This bastard is so fierce. I wonder whose fortune he stole to have such a cultivation in such a short amount of time. Junior brother, come over here. Let's work together to suppress him. Our Dragon Tiger Mountain Celestial Master Sect is the ancestral court of Taoism. We definitely can't let such an evil creature live in this world and continue to harm the common people. The leading old Taoist called the Taoist who was in a stalemate with Uncle Lin over. With a stern expression, he scolded me sternly. He had the demeanor of a righteous leader, and his face was filled with righteousness. With regards to the words of Dragon Tiger Mountain, my ears had almost grown calluses. If they wanted to kill me and steal my treasures, they should have just said it. Why do they have to use righteousness as an excuse? Every time they opened their mouths, they talked about the world and the common people. It was as if the entire world, apart from their Dragon Tiger Mountain Celestial Master Sect, was evil. If anyone's cultivation was higher than theirs, then that person was a demon. The three Taoists quickly gathered together and stood in the 3 talents position. The old Taoist who stood at the front looked left and right and nodded slightly. Immediately after, the 3 of them took out their Celestial Master Seal at the same time. Then, they each patted their own chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. They used the Jade Blood Talisman, a technique that consumed their lifespan, to form a talisman and brand it on the seal. The 3 Celestial Master Seals shone brightly, releasing a majestic aura that swept away the surrounding spirit energy. The Yellow River's 9 bends formation that the fatty had set up earlier also vanished. Then, the 3 Celestial Master Seals revolved in the 3 talents formation, aiming to suppress me. I only felt an overwhelming wave of true essence head on towards me, and I was like a lonely figure standing in front of a monstrous wave, appearing very frail and weak. It had to be said that there was a reason why Longhu Mountain's Taoism hadn't declined for 1,000 years. Just the fact that they were willing to fight with their lives, just because of a disagreement, wasn't something that a normal sect could do. However, although the Celestial Master Seals that the 3 sects had used the Jade Blood Talisman's secret technique looked powerful, they were more flashy than practical. After all, they were only 3 one-word seals. How much true Qi could they withstand? I moved at the right moment and took out my natural Saint Seal. I infused my witchcraft and true Qi into it. The black and white forward seal grew from 3 inches to 3 feet and 3 inches under my full power. Finally, It violently collided with the three celestial master seals that were descending from the sky. Pump! There was a loud sound that was as deafening as a large bell. It stirred up the smoke and dust in the air. I could vaguely see a black and white true chi crisscrossing in the smoke and dust, as though a huge dragon was surging. After a short while, the smoke and dust gradually dispersed. The fatty and Uncle Lin looked slightly nervous as they focused on the scene inside. I stood to the side with a relaxed expression. Back in the Yinshang royal tomb, I had heard that the celestial master of Longhu Mountain could use his yang spirit to set up the three great sword formation to defend against the enemy. The three celestial master seals formation was definitely related to the three greats sword formation. I was originally a little worried, but no matter how powerful a technique was, it needed a suitable person to use it. It was obvious that the three of them didn't have enough power. Although my Dao Qi had been used up and I didn't have much Shaman Qi left, the outcome of the battle had already been decided. It wasn't important anymore. Moreover, I had the true dragon vein and the small bronze cauldron. The former could help me quickly recover my Dao Qi, while the latter could convert true dragon Qi into Shaman Qi. Hence, my true Qi recovery speed was much faster than normal people. At that moment, my Celestial Master Seal had returned to its original size of 3 inches. However, as the seal that was carved with the words Natural Saint, even without the support of true Qi, it was still extraordinary. The black and white colors were distinct, and the entire seal was warm and translucent without a speck of dust. The 4 small seal characters shone brightly. On the other hand, the celestial master seals of the 3 Taoists of Longhu Mountain were now full of cracks and were dim like a piece of stone. Although they could be recovered in time, the 3 Taoists of Longhu Mountain were all paralyzed on the ground and vomited blood. They looked at me in fear and didn't even care about the celestial master seals that were scattered on the ground. Forward seal, inborn saint. What kind of fortune did you steal? You actually obtained such great luck. Could it be that the luck obtained by the 18 celestial masters in the Yin ruins was completely devoured by you? The leading old Taoist clutched his chest with one hand and pointed at me with the other trembling. He kept gasping, and his face was full of disbelief. I have already said that the deaths of the 18 celestial masters in Yinshu, except for Lu Ziyang, who was killed by me, have nothing to do with me. Instead of finding the real murderer, you keep pestering me. Although I, Zhou Yi, have never killed anyone from your Longhu Mountain, I'm not a kind person. If you continue to do this, I will kill my way up to Longhu Mountain and ask your celestial master Zhang for justice. I thought of how Longhu Mountain had chased me over and over again. I was angry and said coldly to the 3 Taoists. However, I didn't expect that the old Taoist would be so stubborn. He shouted at me with half a breath. You are a remnant of the Wu tribe. You dare to talk nonsense about Celestial Master Zhang? You don't know that Celestial Master Zhang can turn you into ashes with a flick of his finger. Today, the 3 of us have fallen into your hands. If you want to kill us, then kill us. Our Celestial Master Mansion will send someone to take revenge for us. Looking at him, I couldn't help but think of Longhu Mountain's Xian Altar Palace Master, Chen Yangting. Faced with the temptation of Celestial Master Yang Shun's disciple, he wasn't moved at all. Instead, he looked disdainful and felt that Yin Nantian couldn't be compared to the 1,000-year-old orthodoxy of Longhu Mountain. Although we were enemies, I couldn't help but sigh at the cohesiveness of the people of Longhu Mountain. At this moment, the fatty had already run over to help the weak Uncle Lin up. He came over and whispered to me, "Third baby, how should we deal with these Taoists? I think we should just kill them. Give me some time. I'm going to set up a great sealing formation. I'm sure we can isolate all traces. Even their natal weapons in Longhu Mountain won't be able to detect them." I didn't answer the fatty immediately. I turned around to check Uncle Lin's wounds. It wasn't a big deal. Then I asked for his opinion. "Uncle Lin, how do you think we should deal with them? We can't kill them." Although Uncle Lin was weak, his voice was still calm. "If we kill them, third baby, you won't be able to clear your name." Don't tell me we're just going to watch these guys come to our door endlessly? Father, if third baby and I hadn't come back in time, you would have been dead. The fatty was angry. He blushed and argued with Uncle Lin. I didn't want to see them quarrel, so I called the fatty. Then I turned around and walked toward the three Taoists. I'll say it one last time. I've never killed anyone from Longhu Mountain, and I won't kill you today. However, this will be the last time. If you don't let me go, I won't be lenient next time. Leave the celestial master seals, and you can leave. After hearing my words, the three Taoist priests cheered up. Even a frowning old Taoist leader relaxed a little, although he looked a little unwilling when I told him to leave the celestial master seal behind. Compared to his life, the celestial master seal was nothing. After the three Taoist priests supported each other and left, I exhaled and put away the three damaged celestial master seals. Then, the fatty and I helped Uncle Lin into the room. I watched Uncle Lin lie down on the bed. After he had recovered a little, I asked him about what had happened today. Uncle Lin coughed a few times, then told me. Those Taoist priests came to the village yesterday. At first, they went to your house to investigate you. However, I don't know how, but they accidentally found the underground palace under the village. I was cultivating in the underground palace when they found me. I wanted to run into the fire god temple from the underground palace, but they caught up with me and forced me out of the underground palace. If I hadn't found this black coffin in the underground palace, I would have died here today. Then, Uncle Lin raised the small black coffin in his hand. Uncle Lin's cultivation base wasn't high, but he could use this small coffin to fight against the three celestial masters of Longhu Mountain. It proved that this item wasn't ordinary. However, I didn't have time to care about the coffin. I was thinking about what Uncle Lin had said about running into the fire god temple from the underground palace. Chapter 643. I roughly estimated the distance between my house and the fire god temple. It was at least a few hundred kilometers. If the two were connected, then how big would the underground palace be? While I was shocked, I also had some doubts. I had entered this underground palace before. Back then, I had lifted Tao Wu's veil for the first time. Tao had also given me the death scripture back then. At that time, I had only felt that it was a very deep cave. I didn't feel that it was very big. I had even thought that this underground palace was a cave that Liang Tianxin had excavated using the old principles and his daughter's corpses to set up the 28 Rakshasa formation. I asked Uncle Lin about it. According to his description, he had sacrificed his life, using the incense of 9 lives in exchange for the wrath of the killer god. A blood-colored coffin descended from the sky to suppress the Rakshasa female ghost. He had thought that he had no chance of survival, but unexpectedly, after a few years, he woke up in the blood-colored coffin. He even found a small black coffin inside. It was the magic tool that he had used to block the 3 celestial masters from Mount Longhu. When he woke up and came out of the underground palace, the fatty and I had already left home, so we didn't know about this. At that time, Uncle Lin's body was weak, so he stayed at home to recuperate. Because he realized that cultivating in the blood-colored coffin could help him condense his shaman chi, he had entered the underground palace a few times to cultivate. Later on, Uncle Lin had accidentally touched some kind of restriction, causing the coffin to move. I discovered that there was a deep tunnel behind the coffin, but it had originally been blocked by the coffin. At the other end of the tunnel is the Fire God Temple. Speaking of which, it's strange. The distance between us and the Fire God Temple is very far, but Uncle Lin said that he only walked for half a day in the cave to reach the Fire God Temple. According to his leg strength, it should be at most 50 to 60 kilometers. The reason why Uncle Lin had given me the handkerchief on behalf of Tao Wu was because he had already been to the Fire God Temple. Hearing such a strange matter, the fatty and I became interested. Since this matter was related to the Fire God Temple, it was a major matter that I had to pay attention to. After all, that place could be considered a home for Tao Wu and I. Calculating the time, in a few more days, it would be the half a year that the bronze giant had told me to meet with Tao Wu. At that time, I had to make a trip to the Fire God Temple. But before that, I still have something important to do, and that is to pay my respects to my parents. For the past 2 years, I've been wandering outside. No matter what important festival it was, I have never returned to my hometown. Every time I think about it, I feel very unfilial. The timing of his return this time was quite coincidental. It happened to be the middle of the Yuan dynasty, which was a good time to worship the ancestors. Uncle Lin used to be a coroner in the village, as well as a carpenter who made coffins. Naturally, there was no shortage of paper money, incense, and candles at home. I picked up some items to keep with me. Then, I went to my parents' grave alone. Looking at the two small mounds in front of me, I couldn't help but think about what happened in the past. At that time, Lu Jinyang brought his third grandpa to my house. Lu Jinyang had a complacent face, and his third grandpa had an indifferent expression, as if he was crushing an ant to death. His father held a hoe in front of me, and my mother's heart-wrenching cries. Unknowingly, my eyes became moist. The past flooded my mind. Every time I thought about it, my hatred for Lu Jinyang increased. My parents' grave was very small. At that time, after I had found my parents' remains from the Corpsine sect, I had hurriedly buried them. Since I was afraid that the Lu family would find them again, I didn't even dare to erect a tombstone. Now that I saw this lonely mound, my heart ached. I walked in front of the grave and used my hands to pull out the weeds around the grave. Then, I moved a few pine trees to plant them. Afterward, I lit some incense, candles, and paper money before kneeling on the ground. Dad, Mom, your son is unfilial. It's been so long since I've come to see you. A few days ago, I met Lu Jinyang again. At first, I thought that he had died in the imperial tomb of the Shang dynasty. I didn't expect that not only would he come back to life, but he also received Chiyo's inheritance. It's hard for me to deal with him. This time, he asked me to go with him to Hebei. I know that this trip won't bode well for me, but I have to go. He took away Fatty's item, and it was because of me. Fatty had risked his life for me many times in the past few years, and he almost lost his life. Uncle Lin also helped me a lot, and I consider them my family. After you two passed away, they're the only family I have left in this world. I must go and take that item back to Fatty. Don't worry. I'll be careful. I haven't taken my revenge yet. I don't want to die like this. By the way, I've made a lot of friends over the years. One of them is called Wang Yongjun, a big boss in Shenzhen. He's a very nice guy. There's another guy called Zhang Kanwen, who is the successor of Wen Tianxiang. There's another guy called Wang Qin, whose identity is even more extraordinary. He's the head of the 10 grottos. But you can't imagine how he addresses me. He calls me a sage. It's interesting, isn't it? Your son is a sage now, just like Confucius, Mencius, and Lao Dan. Grow up. I almost forgot. There's one more important thing that I forgot to tell you. I got married. Are you happy? Your daughter-in-law is very beautiful and has a good temperament. Her name is Lao Ai. We have a good relationship. However, something happened to her. She was taken away by someone. I don't know where she went. I can only see her once every half a year. But don't worry. I'll find her sooner or later. When that time comes, we'll go back to our house and renovate it. It's the house you two built for me to marry my daughter-in-law. I'll definitely come back to live there in the future. Dad, Mom, I'm leaving. I'll try to come back to see you after some time. When I stood in front of the grave, I couldn't help but shed tears. But when I told my parents what had happened in the past few years, my heart calmed down. At this moment, I seemed to have returned to my childhood. After I came home from school, I nestled in my mother's embrace and told her what had happened at school. My mother, who was lying in the grave, didn't say anything. She just gently looked at me and carefully combed my disheveled hair. After I said goodbye to my parents, the sky turned dark. I walked back to Fatty's house in a daze. I saw Fatty and Uncle Lin talking about their daily lives. I didn't disturb them and went to the side room. As soon as I stepped out of the door of the living room, I heard Uncle Lin's voice. "Third baby, you're back. You haven't eaten yet, right? I cooked something this afternoon. I'm heating it up in the big pot in the kitchen." After hearing Uncle Lin's words, I was stunned for a moment. Waves of warmth rose in my heart. The last time someone called me out to eat was when I was at home with my parents. Hearing these words again, I couldn't help but feel a little sour. "Okay, Uncle Lin, You should rest well. I blinked and nodded toward the house. Then, I ran to the kitchen and took out the steaming food from the big pot. Uncle Lin's cooking skills could only be described as SOSO, but the taste of my hometown was still there. Since my parents passed away, I had been running all over the place for the past few years. Although I had tasted all kinds of delicacies, I hadn't had the chance to have a good meal, let alone eat some of my hometown's dishes in such an environment. Although there was only a large bowl of rice and 3 side dishes, I was able to enjoy the meal very much. I chewed each mouthful carefully and swallowed slowly. After I finished eating, I also drank a large bowl of vegetable soup. Only then was I satisfied. Since it was close to the appointment with Lao AI, I would have to leave after a few days. After that, I didn't know when I would be able to eat a meal like this again. After eating, I lay on the bed lazily. I wanted to sleep, but I restrained myself and got up to cultivate. I was about to go to Hebei to meet with Lu Jinyan. What I lacked the most was time. I sat on the bed and meditated. While cultivating the witchcraft and qi, I took out the 3 seals of the Longhu Taoist priests. At this moment, the 3 seals were badly damaged. Not only were they cracked, but I couldn't feel any spiritual energy from them. The seals were dim and looked like ordinary stones that could be found anywhere. They didn't look like the Celestial Master seals that were full of spiritual energy. The reason why I wanted to leave behind the seals of the 3 Celestial Masters wasn't just to punish the 3 Taoist priests from Longhu Mountain. It was also because I discovered some clues during my fight with the 3 Taoist priests. The Celestial Master's seal was the proof of reaching the Celestial Master's realm. It was a life item given by the heavens and was connected to the holder's life. It was useless for others to steal it. But today, when I used my Celestial Master seal to collide with the Celestial Master seals of the 3 Taoists of Mount Longhu, I was surprised to find that after their 3 Celestial Master seals showed signs of weakening, a few strands of essence energy flowed out of the seals and were absorbed by my Celestial Master seal. Then, the 3 seals were like cultivators who had their cultivation shaved off and no longer had their previous brilliance. That wasn't all. After my Celestial Master's seal absorbed the 3 wisps of spiritual energy, I could clearly feel that it was slightly different from before. Not only did the surface of the seal become brighter, but I could also faintly feel that there was a fluorescent light inside the seal. The light was moving back and forth in the black and white areas of the seal. The Celestial Master's seal was a life item. It could only be nurtured by the user's own life energy. It would gradually become stronger as the user's cultivation base increased. I've never seen or even heard of this kind of external force being devoured like this. Thinking about this, I thought of something and took out my Celestial Master seal. I tried to channel my Taoist Qi and Shaman Qi into it. As I channeled more and more Shaman Qi into it, the seal gradually grew bigger and the might it exuded became stronger. 3 inches, 5 inches, 1 foot, 3 feet, 3 feet, 3.5 feet, 4.5 feet. The Celestial Master seal's radiance circulated and grew larger and larger until it reached 4 feet and 5 inches. Only then did it stop growing. Afterwards, no matter how much shaman energy I channeled into it, it didn't grow any larger. The entire room was filled with a dense and vigorous Zhen Yuan. Even the walls of the room started to shake. I hastily retracted the shaman energy, and the seal shrunk back to its original size of 3 inches. Sure enough, my Celestial Master seal had become even stronger after absorbing the essence of the 3 Taoist Celestial Master seals from Mount Longhu. Originally, it could only grow to 3 feet and 3 inches, but now it could grow to 4 feet and 5 inches. Although my cultivation base was infinitely close to the later stage of the seal, during the process of becoming a Celestial Master, unless I reached the next realm, the seal would remain the same size as before. This time, the seal size had increased by 1/3. Moreover, from the Zhen Yuan that was released, it was much stronger than before. Now, my cultivation base had almost reached the later stage of the seal. When the time came, I would be able to break through. The increase in my cultivation base was already a joyous thing. However, compared to that, I was even more excited about the method of absorbing other seals to increase my cultivation base. If this time it wasn't a mutation and could become normal, then I would have found a way to quickly increase the seal's power. This was good news. Although I didn't know the reason behind it, it didn't stop me from being excited. The Celestial Master Seal was one of my strongest techniques. It was also the item that gave me my name. It directly determined my cultivation base. Knock, knock, knock. Just as I was feeling happy, there was a series of hurried knocks on the door. Then, I heard the fatty yelling. "Third baby, what are you doing? Can't you let me sleep? Do you want to tear my house down?" That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.